Okay. I do believe that we are now live. Welcome everyone, to another stream, hopefully one that's going to be interesting. Today I'm joined by my friend Chloe. Say hello, Chloe.
Hi, it's me, Chloe. I'm back again. It's been a while.
Oh, it's been way too long. I've been trying to get you on this stream for a while, but every time I ask you, it's like, you're like, dude, I live in Australia. I can't stream at the drop of a hat, after.
Yeah, for context, it's like early morning on like my first day off for the week. And like I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, I'm hyped for this, but also at the same time I'm just like, oh boy.
That's valid.
This is like
It's like, yeah, I cut you off there.
No, it's all good. I was just saying that it's just like this is one of the first things I'm doing for today, so I'm just sitting here like, oh, lovely. Here we go.
I've also done a couple upgrades to the stream. I've figured out a way to make it so that your icon glows up whenever you talk, so that's cool. Probably something basic for everyone else who's ever done streaming, but for me, I feel very happy with myself. Also, as opposed to last time when I drank half a bottle of whiskey with Nostalgia Critic, this time I'm going to stick to tea this time. So I'm going to just stick to this, I think. Make sure I pour it, don't spill everywhere.
Good. You're already starting off a lot better than you did last time because
yeah,
I was in the chat for that stream and Jesus fucking Christ, Ant.
Demonetization. Okay, that's all good. It's all good. I'll never have streams monetized, it seems. Anyway, that being said,
Ooh, I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. It's always the first 5 minutes, in this case 2 minutes each time. It's okay. It's okay. We'll figure this out as we go. Because right now we're going to be discussing.
It's okay. Daddy YouTube doesn't need to know about that.
There we go. Hopefully the accent disguises it enough so the bots can't recognize vulgarity. Anyway, let's discuss today's subject, which is Noralities. Noralities is a YouTuber who was very popular, very well known a few years ago until she just stopped recording one day. Stopped uploading, I should say. And probably the biggest thing that's noteworthy about this whole thing was that Noralities attracted a ton of attention extremely quickly on this platform, which is not a good thing if you're, let's say, hypothetically speaking, trying to build a platform. Well, she drew a lot of attention, and some of it was very negative, I should say. She drew a lot of criticism for her videos, her reviews, and I think the big thing I want to do right now is go back and ask, okay, why was she so criticized? Was that criticism justified? And do I think she had some really good points, or do I think she was saying a lot of nothing? Like, what's the deal? That's what I want to get down to. I'm watching at least one video, hopefully two, to get to the bottom of this. Now, Chloe, have you ever seen Noralities content before?
I'm about to blow your mind here, and Noralities videos were some of the reason why I started doing my own video essays back a few years ago.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I will definitely preface this by saying that a lot of her opinions do vary with me, and we're going to get into a few of those with this one here, especially with the videos we chose on this one.
Yeah, we chose a couple controversial ones.
Yeah, but I will definitely say that some of the picks that we could have gone for this one would have been very obvious given what I've done in terms of talking about stuff online. You pretty much were just like, hey, we could do the 1 hour Utada video, and I'm just like, yeah, but I feel like I've talked about Utada long enough. I've talked about it for like 5 hours, and I don't know if I can like talk about Noralities doing it and not feel like, oh, yeah, I watched this video. This is what inspired me to do my own. Instead, I chose two other videos, the ones that we're talking about here today, because, well, I'll just be upfront. One of them does still include Usuna to some degree, but it also includes a lot of other magical girls in the lineup with that one there. We'll touch upon that one later on, but it also includes Gatus, so it's just like, gotta cover that for Pride Month, you know?
Oh, we gotta cover something for Pride. I mean, I covered Sailor Moon for Pride too, but now we gotta cover this. Now, I am gonna run these videos at a little bit of a faster speed, slightly, just so we can get through more of it quicker, but we should be fine. I'm gonna run it at, I think, at 1.25 speed. only because I know. Oh, we have a first super chat of the day. Quickie Rose, thank you for super chat. Yay, media literacy and nuance. Yes. We're hopefully going to do that today. Hopefully today's going to be very nuanced, very mature take, but we shall find out when we get to it. So with Noralities, I would consider her an inspiration too, to an extent. I think specifically her Kiki's Delivery Service video I felt was really, really wonderful. I thought really helped me reevaluate Kiki's Delivery Service for the first time in a very long time. Along with that, didn't Patrick Willems do a Kiki's Delivery Service 2 video, I think? Anyway.
I believe he did.
Yeah. Now, but I don't remember all of her videos. And we're not going to cover the Isekai video or the 1,000-Year Lolly video because
no,
I'm not touching either of those with a pull. Isekai because my feelings are very complicated. And I think I would, if this video does well, I'll cover Isekai another day. I think there's a lot to discuss there. And I don't agree with everything she says with Isekai either. But anyway, Corrins, thank you for super chat, and a very noteworthy one too. Rest in peace, Donald Sutherland, 1935 to 2024. Yes. Donald Sutherland was one of the great actors of like the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I saw a ton of people posting clips from Pride and Prejudice, that one scene where he's at the end where he's giving Elizabeth Bennet away to Mr. Darcy. I thought it's one of his most beautiful scenes later in his life. But for me, the movie that I always associate with Donald Sutherland, and there's a ton out there. I mean, everyone says Hunger Games. Some people said Invasion of the Bystanders. For me, it's a movie from 1973 called Don't Look Now. It's based on a Daphne du Maurier novel. It's a fantastic little psychological thriller, or more like psychological drama, really. And it has one of the most genuinely horrifying final. I mean, it's a shot that's been copied a lot in other movies, but that last shot of that movie is just terrifying, like truly like blood curdling. In context, out of context, it's goofy, but in context, it's like it's such an emotional moment that's also so disturbing and so heartbreaking. If you haven't seen Don't Look Now, I recommend you watch it. Seriously. Do you have any experience with Donald Sutherland, Chloe, or?
I'll be honest, my only experience mainly off the top of my head is the one that you brought up, which was Hunger Games. To my I can't off the top of my head be all like, oh yeah, I recall Donald Sutherland in like this movie. And that admittedly is something I feel like I need to change because it sounds like he's a very prolific actor.
Oh yeah, iconic. Really, a lot of great stuff. Honestly, I could spend a whole stream just going over his roles. I even remembered he was in Johnny Got His Gun the other day, and it's a great movie, but I wouldn't recommend Johnny Got His Gun to any human being who doesn't want to be miserable for the rest of the night. And of course, the 1970s Invasion of the Bystanders, which he also is in with Jeff Goldblum and Spock, Leonard Nimoy. Great a lot of great movies, one after the other. Each one's better than the last, I feel like. Watch Donald Sutherland's films. It's fantastic. But for tonight, let's focus on Noralities. Chat is mentioning Noralities uses she, they pronouns, so we will use either or. So one thing I want to point out right now. I don't consider Noralities to be a bad faith critic like I consider Lily Orchard to be a bad faith critic. I think genuinely she's trying. I think she is speaking her honest opinion, and I think that she is genuinely trying to do a good job with her work. So this is not going to be we're not going to insult Noralities offhand. It's not going to be anything like that. We're going to try keeping it just to her ideas. But I do think that it is worth mentioning that when we disagree, we will discuss our disagreements and where we align. It's been a while since we've seen these videos, so our opinions might have shifted when we first saw the videos. And there is some mention in chat about one of the specific controversies, what I do want to bring up right now, and that is the idea of shipping minors with Noralities. That's a whole controversy. Let's just get that out of the way right now because I don't think it's going to really tie in with what we're talking about with these two videos necessarily, unless it does, in which case bring it up again. But Noralities did really push against the idea of shipping of sexualizing underage characters, and which I agree with. It is very uncomfortable sexualizing underage characters in media. It's very strange. It can be very uncomfortable, but a lot of people pointed out that, she had done shipping art of Deku Bakugo in My Hero Academia, both of whom are underage characters. And some people pointed this as her being hypocritical. I personally feel there's a difference between, like, shipping a character and like heavily sexualizing them, and also the difference between fan service, which I feel like those three are different in how I perceive them. But I also understand someone can hear all three of those things and think they're the same basic thing. I don't think that's the case. I think they're three very separate concepts. But again, that's nuance that I'm not really articulating very well. I made a video about fan service. You can hear my opinions more cleverly worded there. At the end of the day, I'm fine with fan service. I just think a lot of it's boring personally. But anyway, so people were arguing she was being hypocritical for criticizing fan service and sexualized characters when she herself was also doing fan art of it. And she deleted the photos and the artwork, which I don't think is necessary. I think that was a lot of... I think it's a matter of someone who is new to YouTube making a general statement, not knowing that statement would be taken out of context and applied to something that she was doing herself, and having to get on the back foot. I think it's harmless ship art. And I think also when we say something online, we don't always understand the full implications of what we're saying. I always try to be very careful with how I phrase things, but again, the problem is, when you say something in a very general statement, it can apply to a lot of different things, and it may not apply to the things you're thinking it's going to apply to, and someone could take it in the wrong direction. And I think the whole thing was much ado about nothing. I don't think this was a super big controversy in terms of the controversies I've covered. And keep in mind, I've talked about Lily Orchard's accusations. I've included mention of John Del Aroz's and Nick Rakita's allegations against them. In the hierarchy of YouTuber controversies, Noralities misspeak, doing a bad take and having to backpedal a little bit is not the biggest or even the 100th biggest in my viewpoint. I think it's a lot of pointing at a certain incident and saying that's the thing that's wrong with them, and it's like, okay, that's not the biggest. It's not a good take, I think, but it's also not worth harassing her over. Yeah.
There is one comment that I do feel like in the chat that is making a good point here. Mm-hmm. There is a difference between shipping fan art and official media that tries to sell you over sexualized teenagers or children as marketing.
100% agree with that, and that's one of the reasons, as much as I love Evangelion as a series, I'm always very uncomfortable buying any Evangelion merchandise because all of it is so sexual and well, not sexual, but positioned in suggestive, I should say. Not sexual, suggestive. And I really wish they just have a neutral fan art of the characters just chilling. I'd love if they have artwork. What I would love is statues of, the poster for the first Rebuild film where they're all in the staircase and they're all just naturally positioned, or the second maybe the second one because there's Asuka in the second one, where they're all just happy, and I would love figures of that. Instead, we got them lounging out with stockings, and it's okay, this is a little exploitative, and I wouldn't want to own that. I wouldn't feel comfortable just owning that.
Yeah, one big example that comes into my head is an officially licensed figurine of Kana from Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, where it's put her and where almost every single figurine of her has some kind of reference to, can't remember her name off the top of my head, but the girl that's always fawning after her and has the fucking Ahegao face whenever she's around her. They have that face in nearly every single figurine I see of Kana has some kind of representation of that Ahegao face. And it's always in a very interesting position. So that's what immediately comes to mind when I saw that comment.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You see, what I like doing is taking the heads of the figures off and putting them on Monster Hunter figures, so they're decked out in like Rathalos armor or something like that. That's what I like doing. But again, it's a little harder to figure out, and I haven't done that in a while. But I think that's kind of cool. And of course, they need. Also,
I will definitely also say as well, in terms of what we were talking about with Noralities and the Deku Bakugo stuff, that sounds like some pro ship, anti ship nonsense, and I'm just come on, people.
It gets nothing important. It's honestly, ship whoever you want. I don't care, as long as you're not. Honestly, my metric is always this: are you hurting someone in real life? If yes, then I will criticize that to hell and back. If not, I can't. There's only a limit to how disagreeable I can find it. Like, if you're hurting a real person or resulting in the harm of real people or profiting from the pain of someone real, that's very different than if you're just drawing weird fan art that I don't particularly agree with. Like, that's where I draw the line. Ultimately, I'm not sure if you agree with me on that one, Chloe, but like,
I definitely 100% agree with that stuff. Like, I've seen I've seen literal harassment campaigns go on, all because people like write certain types of fan fiction or ship certain people in like anime or cartoons, and I just sit back and think to myself, the people who are shipping these sorts of things aren't doing any real harm. The people who are harassing people who are into those sorts of ships are, in fact, doing actual harm to those people.
Agreed. And some of the comments are pointing this out. And we're going to get to the videos very short. Oh, no, there's Super Chat. Mystic Mind Analysis. Thank you for the Super Chat. In addition to, are you hurting real people, I would add, are you cultivating hurtful ideas? And that's the more nuanced one. That's where it gets a little complicated. I agree to an extent. The problem is some fantasies are inherently tricky. And I'm not saying that I have any of those or that Chloe has any of these, but I don't believe in kink shaming, but I also believe that if you were to apply these fantasies to a real person, it would be dangerous. But like I'm thinking like when I went to fan art artist alleys back in the convention days. We used to go more often. I haven't gone to a convention in years. I should go again, actually. It'd be fun. I would pass by the artist booths that had like Guro art, like really like grotesque, violent stuff, and the people who illustrated it were sometimes some of the nicest people I've ever met. Very kind, very open, and progressive in many ways. But they just happened to enjoy drawing something that was very disturbing to the average person, myself included. So the question there becomes, are they hurting anyone, or is this art so outlandish it's clearly in the land of fantasy and there's no application for it? That's another discussion that I'm not ready to get into right now, because I'd have to like really draw out the layers of that idea. And then you have to bring in Clive Barker and horror writers, but that's a whole discussion. Actually, Clive Barker, if you want to hear some thoughts on Clive Barker, tune in tomorrow when my new horror essay drops. But we'll find out as we go. That was somewhat a plug for the horror essay for tomorrow, but you know.
Roman made a pretty good comment in there. Cultivating hurtful ideas is a bit of a hard metric to meet. A lot of anti-LGBT, a lot of anti-queer people would say that any kind of like representation for that relationships being depicted are hurtful.
Exactly.
So it's very hard to really draw the line at what is cultivating hurtful ideas, because many people can use that to twist it into their own sort of narrative.
Exactly. And that's where it's really complicated, because we all have an idea of what we think of as harmful, right? What I'm thinking is harmful may not be what you're thinking of as harmful, though. And that's where it gets really complicated, because then you take that same approach, and someone who's bigoted takes it and uses it anyway. But then the counter argument to that is a bigot would just do that anyway, regardless of if you did it first. So it's all big. Anyway, this is more about the complexity of discussion. There's no easy answer, and there is discussion back and forth, and that's what we're hoping to do with the Noralities videos. Have a discussion. I don't want to target Noralities. If Nora is by any chance watching this video, and I have no reason to believe that she will. I should probably mention too, people have strangely enough shipped me with Noralities, or said I'm connected to Noralities, or say I'm related to Noralities, which is just not true. Like multiple times, and it's really strange. It's happened more than twice.
I did notice that as a comment earlier on in the chat, saying that your profile pic looks like Noralities' brother or something like that.
It's really strange, and it's unintentional. I have no idea. I mean, listen, I would love to chill with Noralities. If Noralities is watching, let's hang out. It'll be fun. But we'll have a good conversation. But like, I don't know where that came from. Anyway, we've done enough talking. Another super chat. I'm going to bring this screen over in the meanwhile. So another super chat. Let me open that back up. Peter, thank you so much for super chat. We need to remember fandom terms like, I'm not going to pretend to pronounce it. You can not Kamato. Don't like, don't read, and the like when approaching fan work. Yeah, again, don't like, don't read. If you don't like this, don't engage with it. It's that simple. So, for the first video, we're going to address the more complicated of the two. We're going to watch I'm worried about cancel culture, which deals with
Manga of children.
problematic media. Now, let me go back a second. When I was hovering over these, I autoplayed some of it by accident, so that's why some of that is played out. Oh, I'm recommending myself, though. I'm live right here. It's cool. Anyway, I always love when that happens.
Algorithm just knows. It just knows.
It just knows. It knows what I am. Anyway, so before we get started, let's get a couple of any questions you want to say before we get started, Chloe?
No, not really. I will definitely say, because I didn't get to mention it before, the big reason why I specifically chose this one, because, spoiler alert, I was the one that was picking the videos that we're doing here today. The reason why I chose this one is because I noticed a very specific anime in the thumbnail for this one.
One that where the manga volumes are actually behind me right now as we speak. So there's gonna be a lot of complications on that one. I still have I still have those. People have mentioned, made comments about that in the back. I'm actually not even sure if it's visible right now. It is.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. One of the ones in that thumbnail was Rurouni Kenshin. Bit of context for that one. Rurouni Kenshin was one of my personal favorite animes when I was first getting into anime when I was a youngster. I just back when it came out as a dub in Australia as Samurai X instead of just being shown as Rurouni Kenshin. So the history of what ended up happening with the mangaka has a bit of a it's a bit bittersweet for me personally because I absolutely love the series, but I can no longer go back to it in good faith knowing that the mangaka has done horrific things behind it and he's still making money off of it to this day, so I have not even bothered to watch the remake of Rurouni Kenshin because I know that it is directly supporting that horrible person.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested to see what is going to be discussed about with this one here because of that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Kenshin was one of the first manga I finished from start to finish. That and I think Yu Yu Hakusho, when they were being published in the Shonen Jump magazine, and you had to like, oh cool, it's in Shonen Jump, and I want to read the rest of it. And I would religiously buy the manga volume and read through everything. So I loved those those manga. I adored them. I watched the anime, I watched Samurai X, and when the news came out, I remember I was with a few friends, all of us had grown up with Kenshin. We all were like, it took a second for us to absorb what we had just read. Like we're kind of like, oh, okay, and then we kind of did what we were doing, and it kind of was sinking in slowly the full implication of what we had just heard, and the fact that you just got a light slap on the wrist, and then kept making more manga, and is tied in with the financial success of all these new shows. It's arguably. I know we could. I made a video recently about Harry Potter, and I criticized J.K. Rowling in that, and that's one thing right there that she's profiting from the works. But there's something very different about Kenshin because I still think that's a great piece of fiction, and knowing what he did is horrendous, and knowing that he's just got like the most minuscule of repercussions for it is absolutely awful. And and they're going to discuss in this video too, so I'll save more thoughts there for the complexities and specifics, but he got nothing at all in response to this, what would destroy someone's career, what should have destroyed his career, quite frankly.
Yeah, I will definitely say that for those of you who are wondering why I'm not directly mentioning it, it's because, to be upfront, I've already demonetized this video enough for Anne, so I don't want to have to bring up the fact that of what exactly he's done. But also it's the fact that this information is very easily accessible. It's even on his Wikipedia page at this point. So, and it's been like 13 or 12 or 13 years since these revelations came out. It's something I feel like should be a lot more common knowledge by this point.
Agreed. Anyway, we've done enough dodging around the point. Let's just dive right in, shall we?
Let's go.
All right, let's talk about problematic media. Content warning mentions and discussions of the sexualization of children, child pornography, pedophilia, death threats, rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and transphobia.
If you know what we're dealing with already, now you do.
I'm going to be talking about some of these issues at length.
Oh, let me get the subtitles on, actually, I just realized.
Yeah, good idea.
Let me see if I can... Yeah, it's fine.
To try and not show anything graphic, but I may have to include a few shots of anime or manga of children being sexualized in the beginning section, so please be warned of that. So, my last video
lovely.
on child character design ended up being...
This is kind of what I feared would happen to me when I started doing videos.
Yep. So that's also, it's funny too. As someone who had a bit of a controversy recently myself, I didn't get even a fraction as bad as Noralities got. So...
Oh, I remember when you started doing your videos and people were like trying to pull the you're actually being racist card when you started doing your videos. I remember seeing those comments and getting downvoted because of that, and I'm just like, damn, I see this and I'm just like, I thought that would happen to me, given the hot takes I'm talking about as well. Damn.
Well, the problem is I mentioned, I'm drawing a blank on her name from Guilty Gear.
Bridget.
I mentioned Bridget in my video, and that drew everyone at me at once. Although strangely enough, the one guy on Twitter who's like a quote unquote Japanese nationalist who's really just a British guy was actually defending me, which I find so funny. Like I didn't expect this to happen, but anyway,
that is just nuts. Also, Norality's face right now is just us going into like this because like we know exactly what we're getting into.
Yeah, this is pain I can relate to on an intimate level.
Yeah. All right, let's rip that Band-Aid off. Let's go.
Here we go.
I don't want to say popular because that feels wrong, but it did receive a larger response than I'm used to. First of all, I did receive a lot of comments from people being genuinely happy that I talked about this. And to all those people, thank you. I am touched beyond belief, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that your kindness and support makes this all worth it. And to the audience of people who did not agree with me, well, okay. I originally wanted to put this part at the end of the video, but I don't think the people who disagree with me will actually engage with this video for long enough to get to the ending, because they certainly didn't with the last video.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Funny how that happens.
Statement.
That's the thing, too. With every video I've had that's controversial, the engagement rate suddenly drops from the beginning because you get people who come from a troll video or troll response. They click on the video, leave a comment, then leave. And you can tell they never even watched the video, so it's hard to take those comments seriously in general. But I digress.
Yeah.
People are now saying they can see the resemblance between me and Noralities physically based on the avatars used. We'll keep. I'm gonna
Dragon Maid video, that. I guess.
Yeah.
I know it seems silly to keep talking about this and like I'm wasting my time, but I genuinely want to believe that most of the people who disagreed with me are not acting with malicious intent, but are just simply misinformed or maybe a bit confused. If you are willing to take the time to actually listen to my side and then you still disagree with me, then that's all I can ask. Because there is no conversation at all if you're not even willing to engage in the first place. So before you start writing a comment on this video, I want you to really take some time to think critically about which side of this argument you want to land on. The reason I brought up the
Alright, I'm gonna pause it right here because I think it's a really good point. And I also think she makes a mistake here too. On one hand, I think it's a good point to... first off, Super Chat. Adrian Parchman, thank you for the Super Chat. Lavender Town and Nitrix made disturbing video, yet are the nicest people ever. Yeah, again, agreed. And I'm going to go into the topic with this with tomorrow's video. I actually got to interview someone who I've worked with before, who has made horror content and is super friendly. I met tons of people in the horror community who are very friendly, extremely friendly people, very kind, genuinely kind. Actually, I find also the people who make disturbing content tend to be the most level-headed people I've met. It's the comedians who lose their minds. It's the people who make lighthearted content who are like secretly out. I'm making a stereotype, of course. It's a general statement, but yeah, I've always loved people who are creative and use their creativity for disturbing ends. So I agree with that statement too, fully. Okay, so with Noralities' point, what I was trying to say is that I think that on one hand, what she's doing is she's trying to encourage people to engage with her discussion, but I think she's making a mistake saying that the only reason you would disagree with her is if you don't understand the argument. That's a mistake, I think, on her part, because what it does is it positions you in a way where you are positioning yourself as the one who is right no matter what, and there's nothing to learn from the situation. Which can be off-putting to an audience who may genuinely be like just kind of neutral and reacting before thinking things through. You're not going to win them over with that. But then again, the question becomes: do you really want to win an audience who is being so negative over it? It's one of those things where it's complicated. There is no easy answer, but I think that by making that statement, you are feeding into their opinion, and that is going to actually backfire in their response to you. That's my opinion, based purely on someone who's been in a few controversies. It's sometimes better to say either nothing or to invite people to engage with the discussion and kind of leave it at that, or you heckle them. One of the two, because you either go all the way or you go none of the way. It's one of the two extremes.
Yeah, it's really just one of those things, and I immediately was just thinking to myself, oh no, you're wording it like that is only going to make things worse. I feel like wording it in a matter like that, where it's just like, oh, that she's like the one that has like the right opinion here, is just like, it's already starting off on the wrong foot with that one there. I feel like if she worded it just a bit more neutrally, where she wasn't making herself to be on the high ground with that one there, I feel like it would have been a lot better, to be honest.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Also, comments, I said anime YouTuber, not YouTuber in general. And Joe Cat really did do nothing wrong. Like, Joe, I will go to bat for Joe Cat. Genuinely, that guy did nothing wrong.
Same.
But, yeah, in a heartbeat, I go to bat for Joe Cat. The guy's great. Anyway.
Author of Rurouni Kenshin not facing jail time or even being fired for his possession of roughly 100 DVDs of real child porn, not anime, actual human children, was because he is not the exception to the rule in Japan, he's kind of the standard. The possession of child pornography only became totally illegal in Japan in 2015. Charges for possession include imprisonment for up to 1 year and being fined up to 1 million yen, which is just under 9,000 US dollars. He was fined 200,000 yen, or less than $2,000. To everyone who commented about the sexualization of child characters in anime having no real-world harm and that it's just a part of Japan's culture, I would like to inform you of the increasing rates of child abuse, which includes sexual abuse, that Japan has been experiencing, reaching record-breaking heights for the last 29 years in a row, all while American child abuse rates have been on the decline. To everyone bringing up Japan's age of consent, sure, at 13, Japan's base age of consent is the lowest of any developed country. However, many prefectures also have local corruption of minors or obscenity statutes, which raise the de facto age of consent to 16 to 18. The effective age of consent in Tokyo by local statute is 18. And it's not like this is an issue that is set in stone either. It can be changed. In November 2020, students submitted a petition to raise the age of consent from 13 to 16, which received 40,000 signatures. Arguing that it's fine because it's not technically illegal in Japan should mean nothing to you. I can guarantee from my video analytics that at least 44% of you are from the United States. Like 100 people living in Japan clicked on my video, which is like 0.01%. They are not the people I am trying to talk to here. You cannot use cultural differences as a defense when part of that culture also ends up hurting people. Media does not exist in a vacuum, and portraying sexualized child characters in any media normalizes the sexualization of children to the audience. Why do you think so many of you can't even see this as a problem? It's because anime has normalized it to you.
And I want to stop here.
Yeah, same. You first. You first.
She's making a very good point. Like, she was making a very good point in relation to number one, why Rurouni Kenshin's mangaka doing all of that is really bad, especially because, to put it into context, the amount of stuff that he had at that period of time was so much to the point where they didn't just think he was like in possession of it, they thought he was distributing it to others at that period of time.
I think they even I'm not sure exactly. Did they ever confirm it was distribution as well, or was it just possession?
They assumed that he was distributing it. They never
Okay.
confirmed if distribution was a part of that. They 100% did assume distribution, but they never charged him for distribution. It's also very good to bring up all of that in relation to the differences between cultures between Japan and the US, especially because she's bringing up some very good statistics in relation to all of that. And I feel like making that as part of the argument is very good.
All right.
Where she loses me.
Hold that
where
one
she
thought.
loses-
We have a super chat. Just hold that one thought. Super chat, classic Luigi fan. Thank you so much. You got 2 super chats. So once we get through these, I'll finish your thoughts. Sorry about that. This is the second stream in a row to feature a video talking extensively about Japan's age of consent laws. If I had a nickel, etc., etc. Yeah, it's kind of weird that it happened twice, isn't it? In the same week. Octo Ari, thank you for the super chat. Not in the headspace for this topic today. Have a good stream, man. Yeah, if you're not in the headspace for this stream, this is a lot. This is a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the second half we'll get a lot lighter off in the back half of this video, but the first half it is going to be very heavy. The second video is much lighter in theme. If you want to come back an hour in, we'll probably be past this point, but this will be heavy, especially at the beginning. So Chloe, please finish your thought. Sorry about that, interrupting you.
That's all good. I know you got to get the super chats out of the way. The point I was going to make is that where she really loses me in relation to this is about how, and this may be something that gets brought up a lot with this video specifically, but with the way that she sounds, I guess the best way to say it is very preachy at the very end. Like, it sounds like she's really trying to be all like, why can't you understand this point about it? When it's just like, I feel like if she just cut it off right before that, as she goes into this bit, I feel like she would have made that point very concise and not as like very like she's talking down to the people that she's trying to make this point to. And I feel like this is going to be something we might be revisiting as part of this. If it is, great. This is going to be fun. But one thing I will definitely say in relation to that is that her points that she's making at the end of the day, the baseline points that she's trying to make with this, they're absolutely correct. I just feel like the way that she is talking about them really needed a lot more work and a lot more like a lot better in terms of like actually vocalizing it a lot better. That didn't make it sound like she's trying to talk down to her audience.
I agree. I think I have one other thing to add too, though, and here's the comparison here. We're talking about anime. At no point does she connect the real world statistics to the proliferation of minors being exploited in animation. She shows a very important discussion, which is the age of consent laws in Japan and all of that discussion. That's very important. But she doesn't tie it in enough with what ultimately is they don't tie it in quite right with the media itself. The point is very important to make. She's citing the right sources. Her arguments are sound, but her tone and I think ultimately the connective tissue between this point and her thesis at this point in the essay is a little weak. Because it's hard to really connect real world statistics of people's behavior to a media that only a percentage of that country consumes. A discussion can be made that the culture is permitting abusive behavior and that allows people to act on their worst impulses or behave in ways that harm others because they're not penalized for it. But the problem is it's kind of hard to like hammer the point home with this line of discussion at this point. She probably should have kept it as like a statement and not tried to connect it too much to the media development in question. And if your example is Eromanga Sensei, that too was a little problematic because that was seen as an extreme case at the time, like, which is a whole other discussion. Anyway, but these is the nuance of discussion. At this point, we're not saying that she's wrong. We're just saying that her argument could be better crafted, more refined.
Oh, yes. Yeah, at this point, the points that she's making are very much correct. It's just the way that she's conveying those arguments needed a lot more work.
Yeah, Nerdy Saria in the comments I saw is saying she's pointing to a correlation, but she can't link it to a causation. That's it right there. There's no causational component here. There is correlative elements, and to frame it as correlative would be a better argument. The problem is she's making it sound like it's causational, and even if that's not her intent, it's how it sounds, and that's a mistake. A common mistake a lot of people, myself included, have made, but it is a mistake. Mionyan, thank you for the super chat. America has Riverdale and other teen dramas which often over-sexualize minors. I don't know if it's solely isolated to anime and manga, and that's a fair point.
Yeah.
That's a great point, actually. Horror does the same thing, too. TV dramas do the same thing. And again, they get away with this because the actors are in their 20s or 30s. So,
I mean, you want a perfect example of modern shows that have sexualized minors on there? Mm-hmm. HBO's Euphoria.
Great example. Agreed. 100%. And even though those are actors playing a character, it's still the same conceptual problem as in the anime that Noralities is criticizing. And the question becomes, do you want to make Euphoria illegal? Well, no one would say that because Zendaya isn't 18, isn't 17. She's an adult. But she's playing a character who's 17, 18. Where does that boundary where's the line crossed, you know? Where does that boundary get crossed? And again, this is fictional. This is fiction. These are made-up characters who are portrayed by real people or portrayed by pencil drawings or computer-generated graphics.
I want to call out someone in the comments right now. Mm-hmm. Pumpkin Pyrite saying, look at the legacy of Nickelodeon and the Dan Schneider era. That's all sexualized minors.
100% also.
Yeah. I'm just thinking to myself here, yeah, that's you. With what we know now, that's definitely something where you really got to look at that in that context, especially given what we know now.
But the thing also I'd say to that is that Dan Schneider was responsible for all those products, and his actions reflected on Dan Schneider's behavior specifically. What Noralities is trying to say is a much broader argument that the culture is affected by the media in some capacity. With Dan Schneider, and with any individual, you can tell if they keep doing a thing, it's reflective of some beliefs they may have, some core beliefs they may possess. For example, Woody Allen with underage relationships. You know, like, he does it so often in his work, you kind of go, wait a second, this guy doing something, and you find out later, oh, he is doing something, you know, and that makes sense to you. With Dan Schneider, same thing. But those are individuals whose creative body of work reflect on their personal beliefs. And that's where things get complicated. But again, that's a trickier discussion to have. I think we should get back to... and mentioning Totally Spies in the comments too, which... Totally Spies is a whole other discussion. One that I think maybe...
Yeah, I mean, let me put it to you like this. There's a line between actually sexualized cartoons in the West versus shows that just have a bunch of kink material in them. I would definitely put Totally Spies in the latter because while there is definitely a lot of kink stuff in Totally Spies, I would argue that at least for the seasons where they're very much in high school, they are not sexualized.
Yeah, plus Totally Spies is so ridiculous that it's hard to take it seriously, whereas something like Eromanga Sensei, though also ridiculous, is done in a more realistic fashion of sorts, even if it's ridiculous in the conceptual elements, whereas Totally Spies incorporates cartoon logic every 5 seconds. So, very different tones. Anyway, back to Noralities. I think we can get sidetracked on this for a while.
Yes.
And also, none of this matters anyway, because guess what I found out after making the Dragon Maid video? The author, Cool Kyo Shinja, has drawn at least 5 comics of child porn, so there is literally no point in defending this person. One of which is 194 pages in length, Do you know how long it takes to draw nearly 200 pages of anything? This is a theme in Dragon Maid for a reason. This isn't even a matter of possession. This guy is producing and distributing comics of child porn. And look, I know doujinshi or hentai of child porn aren't illegal in Japan. This guy has not done anything that I know of that could be met with legal action. And even in America, when it comes to drawn child porn, it's a little messy, right? In 2005, in Richmond, Virginia, Dwight Worley was sentenced to 20 years in prison for his possession of child porn, including hentai, digital photos of real children, and graphic text-based emails. Among the arguments in his appeal was that cartoons are protected under the First Amendment because they do not depict real children. He also claimed the statute is unconstitutional because text-only emails cannot be obscene. 2 judges rejected those arguments. A third agreed with Worley on those issues, but joined in the majority in affirming his convictions on the counts pertaining to the photographs. The Protect Act of 2003 includes the possession of anime or manga that portrays children in sexual activities as a prosecutable offense. The Supreme Court held that virtual child pornography was protected free speech, provided that the virtual depictions are not obscene. Obscenity, including obscene depictions of children, either virtual or real, is unprotected speech. Kobayashi's Dragon Maid has a story. It depicts and frames children in sexual situations, but it is not porn. It would not be classified as obscene. But because his doujins depict children having sex with adults, those would be considered obscene and they would not be protected under free speech. I'm not going to pretend I know what this guy's deal is. I don't know what's in his heart. But the mere sexual attraction to children is enough to be classified as a pedophile. It does not matter if they have actually engaged in a criminal act or not. I think it is important to note that as of 1968, pedophilia is listed in the APA as a mental disorder, which would make it not a choice but a diagnosis. However, I'm not sure how much faith to put in that, considering how enormously under-researched this issue is, and considering that homosexuality was also listed as a mental disorder until 1973, and that being transgender was only removed from the APA in 2012 under the term gender identity disorder. And literally before anyone tries to frame pedophilia as another sexual orientation like homosexuality, I would posit that you cannot have a sexual orientation where the party you are attracted to is legally incapable of giving consent 100% of the time. They are in no way comparable. If my theory is wrong...
That's a complicated one, too, because paraphilia is also not a sexuality. And that's where that would probably fall under. Still, I'm not sure why she opened up that discussion at all.
Yeah, part of me is just thinking to myself, why are you going down this specific rabbit hole? Because this kind of opens up the floodgates a bit more for a not so great discussion to be had in your comments, which I get the feeling did in fact happen.
Oh, I'm sure the comments are a nightmare. I'm not going to bother checking. I can just assume.
Yeah, I was going to say, please do not go into the comment section for this one. There is nothing good that's going to be in there.
People in the comments are asking what a paraphilia is. Paraphilia is essentially a preference of some variety that is indicative of a certain external feature. Someone might call this a fetish in some cases. That falls under the term paraphilia. It's not a sexual orientation. It is usually either an inhibition or a compulsion for certain experiences of that nature. It's a very complicated issue, which again are not studied nearly enough. As Noralities is right there. This is not a topic that's been examined enough by social sciences and what have you. It's usually just kind of left as like, although marketing research. I'm kidding. That's terrible. But like, but no, it's a topic that's not really discussed enough in psychoanalytic circles nearly enough. But there are studies being done on it, in usually the more benign paraphilias, like, leather. Something like pedophilia, of course, is definitely a very different discussion. Anyway, so this is a topic that I have no idea why you went down this rabbit hole. I see the logic of your argument as an isolated argument. I don't get why you're opening yourself up to this discussion, though, and it seems very unnecessary for her point. I'm saying that you, like, I'm talking to you to Noralities for this video. I wasn't catching that. I don't understand why she's doing this. It doesn't make sense to her concept, and she started talking about, Kenshin and all that, and she talked about the Dragon Maid manga artist doing all this Shota stuff. I don't think it's... I just think it's like opening herself up to a lot of criticism a lot of discussion from people who are going to take her argument in bad faith and misdirect the entire stuff.
I'll be upfront here. I feel like when she said that she was going to leave this at the end of the video, but instead put it at the beginning, I feel like the better option would have been that you could have just made this an entirely different video, like a short follow-up to the Dragon Maid video, and then you release that as a separate thing, and that way it doesn't bog down an already very lengthy video, if we're being honest here, about a completely different topic, just for you to make, just so that you can tack on a response to your previous video. Like, this feels like it's kind of just bogging it down to begin with, and it feels like we're already off on the wrong track here, and I'm not surprised that a lot of people kind of tuned out throughout this or completely skipped this bit, because it really does feel like it's not what we're here for. Get to the point already.
Yeah, this is a bad track to take your conversation down. It's just inviting negativity in a way that's, I think, very concerning, and it's just a bad idea for this. And again, people in the comments I'm seeing, aside from the one responding to the one Lily Orchard stand in the comments, hello there. Apparently, the big question is, what's the thesis of this video? Like,
we haven't even really got into that point.
Yeah, we don't know what the point of this video is yet, and the problem is that, and again, I get it. There's a temptation to respond to negativity, especially the sheer quantity of negativity that she received. The problem is, though, that by explaining it in this fashion, you drown out your own video's point. So your own audience watching this is no longer going to get what they wanted. Your audience wants to hear your thoughts because they like you. They like your arguments, they like your concepts. You can't then drown that out with this nonsense. Not nonsense, that's the wrong word, but this non sequitur argument, essentially. Unless it ties into the thesis in some way, which I'm not sure it's going to. And it's just depressing because, like, it smothers her argument entirely at the beginning. That's the big issue here. And, I get the urge to respond, but it would have been better for her to say nothing than to do this, I think. Anyway, any other thoughts before I keep going, Chloe?
I'll be honest, I think we kind of said all we could really say about this first bit.
Agreed.
I'm just glad we're getting past that and getting to the point we actually wanted to get to here.
Agreed. It's only a few minutes more. Hopefully
pedophilia is still categorized as a mental illness 10 or 20 or however many years from now, after more research has been done, then obviously I would prefer these people use drawings of child porn as an outlet and not actual child porn.
She's responding to the comments that would be
and recovery were a possibility, then obviously I would prefer that over unnecessary incarceration. But that was not the point I was trying to make.
Also, as a disclaimer, I shouldn't even have to say this, but do not harass anyone. I specifically made this video to address how completely out of control online harassment has become. Do not use this video as an excuse to harass or bully or send death threats to anyone.
And this goes to my comment section as well.
Are in the description.
One thing with that one real quick.
To actually learn.
I will definitely say, saying that is really good, especially because a lot of people will basically see videos like this and use that, especially with the rise of online harassment campaigns. People will assume that people making videos in relation to that sort of thing and pretty much saying, hey, these people are not great. and using that as basically the dog whistle in a sense to essentially just go and harass them.
Exactly.
So I love it. I've loved when creators basically use that phrase to basically be all like, hey, I'm talking about how I feel personally, and it's why I'm glad that whenever we talk about people in these streams, we're just like, we're not here to incite a harassment campaign. We're not trying to do anything like that. We're just here to talk about our own things about them. This is not a direction for you to be all like, hey, go harass this person because they're a shit person.
Agreed.
And it's why I really hated it as a more recent example when people online were saying that James Somerton's like whole media blackout and his like fake suicide thing, people were blaming people like H Bomber Guy for trying to essentially that led James to that point.
Yeah, it
except
H Bomber
Guy. Yeah, and H Bomber Guy never.
Before you say that, Darth Ninja 65, thank you for the super chat. Sorry, as you were.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that H Bomber Guy explicitly said in that one not to harass James. He said that multiple times in that video. In fact, everyone who made videos about James Somerton during that time basically made the same point to not harass him. They're basically just trying to ensure that he's held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is great. But many people just ignore that in the face of, oh, they did this video and harassment happened after the fact. They incited harassment. And I'm just like, people just... Online literacy, I feel like, is dying because of that. But that's just me. I just wanted to make one comment because I love it when people say that sort of thing and stuff like this to essentially just make it clear that that's not what they're going for.
Exactly. Anyway, so back to the video real quick. I do. There's a lot here we have to get through, and I think we should keep going.
More about these issues for themselves. Otherwise, I am moving on. So this is actually a great way to segue into a topic that I've wanted to discuss for a while, which is problematic media and everything that entails, like cancel culture, death of the author, how media we consume impacts reality. I promise you that I had parts of this script written months ago, and I did not furiously whip it up because a bunch of strangers were kind of weird in my comment section. But
it would be interesting
what
if you
I found
did, to be honest,
interesting
Noralities.
about the negative responses was most people knew they couldn't outright defend the sexualization of Kana or Ilulu's design because it would implicate them as siding with people who think that being sexually attracted to children is fine. Which, some people still did do that anyway, though, and those people can leave.
Yeah, they're not ever worth engaging with.
Most of them worded their grievances so that they weren't directly addressing the actual points that I made, but framed it so that the problem was with me and my perceptions. The most
comments
common
like that feel like they
responses
came
being
directly
some
from
form
4chan,
of,
to be
"It's
honest.
just fiction,
100%.
not reality," or "If you don't like, don't watch." Which, wow, the scales have fallen from my eyes. Truly, how could I have been so blind? I am a human being that is clearly unable to distinguish fiction from reality. How silly of me. I wonder why all those people were so upset at the minstrel shows and the depiction of blackface when it's
you
just
got
a
me
drawing
with this one,
after all.
Noralities.
Art never has an impact on people, obviously. Like all those people upset at the Confederate flags and statues in America. What? They're just statues in fabric. It's not like their presence means anything. I mean, it's not like a drawn image can reinforce and perpetuate harmful ideologies to the people who see them, so much so that a government might even take action to ensure that depictions of those images have legal consequences. Oh, wait! The phrase...
Darth Ninja 65, thank you for the next super chat. I'm guessing her point is showcasing the people criticizing her are defending an actual PDF file. I'm probably wrong, though. I don't think that's her argument, but I don't think.
I don't think that's the argument she's making here. I don't think that's the argument she's making here. But I feel like the argument that she is actually making is getting lost in like the bit she was trying to do. Which, it's a good bit.
It's a good bit.
My god.
It honestly should have led with that bit. Just start with that.
Yeah.
Just cut the preamble, get to that, you're fine. You shave 7 minutes off the video, but you still get to that. Your first instinct to saving that diatribe for the end or not at all, that was the right instinct. You should have followed with that. just jump into the sarcasm. It's great. Because like sarcasm is much more effective at communicating your ideas than like I'm a big proponent of sarcasm. I mean, from New Jersey, what are you going to do? That's kind of our bread and butter. But like, sarcasm is a great way of relaying your ideas fully and completely. And especially if you're playing Cruel Angel's Thesis in any of your videos, that's always a plus. Just saying. Again, not going to help with the demonetization element. If I'm probably this video is demonetized before we even started, I think, at this point. But,
Yep.
you know, what are you going to do? Okay, so there you go.
Of these comments are, I think, not meant to be a serious form of critique and are just supposed to put me on the defensive. But it is an absurd counter-argument because it completely closes the door for any critical analysis of any media. Like, out of context, don't watch seems like a reasonable statement. For instance, I don't like superhero films. Nothing wrong with them, they just have oversaturated the market and I don't find them interesting. I don't like them,
Way more
I don't
relatable
watch
in
them, and I don't
2024.
spend days of my life critically breaking down their core themes or explaining to people why I don't like them, because why would I? However, the problem was not that I did not like Dragon Maid. The problem was that it perpetuated harmful imagery of sexualized children, which is harmful to children. I liked The Promised Neverland, but its depictions of Sister Crone reinforced awful racist imagery of black people, which is harmful to black people. The framing of "it's just fiction, not reality" at first seems so innocuous, asserting that whatever it's responding to as lacking common sense, unable to distinguish the difference between fiction and reality. But this is what you have to understand. Fiction does not equal reality, and media does affect reality. So
Okay, so let's break that down a second there.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with a lot of different things. Sister Crone especially, I'm not... It's been a while since I've read The Promised Neverland, so I'm not going to pretend I remember that distinctly. That's something I would prefer a black critic to discuss. Because it's just not... I don't think I'm properly equipped with the historical context or any of that to really respond to that. And also, it's been a very long time since I've read Promised Neverland, so my memory alone is
I will definitely... I will say this. Neither of us are really that well equipped, I should say, to handle that topic of racism in relation to Promised Neverland's depiction of that.
Yeah.
So I will definitely say that I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole in this video, to be honest.
Yeah.
That last bit that she made about fiction does not equal reality, but media affects reality, that's actually a pretty decent point that she's making in relation to this. I just hope that she actually, sticks to that point and maybe actually makes some decent marks towards that, to be honest.
My problem is I wish she used a better example. There's several examples she could have used that would have been way better to indicate how media has impacted reality. One of the best examples of that is, of course, the very famous film Birth of a Nation, which is singularly responsible for reviving the Klan in the United States. It's one of the most iconic films of all time because it perfected a lot of cinematic techniques, and because it sparked a lot of actual violence that it was still feeling the ramifications for over a century later. That right there is an example of real, genuine damage caused by media. I was seeing a comment saying bring an FD signifier to talk about the depiction of black people in anime. Yeah, if he ever wanted to show up my stream, I would drop everything to accommodate him. That man is brilliant. But no, yeah.
Honestly, if you ever get on a stream with FD signifier, I feel like that's the sign that you've made it, to be honest.
That would be fantastic.
His takes are actually pretty damn good.
Oh yeah, he's way more articulate than I ever could be. But no, but that's the thing, like right there. And again, so she does talk about Birth of a Nation. Okay, good. So she brings it up. That's good. I would have preferred her to bring it up sooner, but if she talks about it, that's perfect. Then that's exactly what we need to have happen. That's perfect. But yeah, no, depictions of children, that's the tricky part. She hasn't yet tied in that, because here's the thing, you can look at it from two different perspectives, that the media depicting children this way affects reality, or that the reality affects the fiction. I would be more inclined to say, much like with Dan Schneider, much like with Woody Allen, that the creative minds producing this work are the ones taking their own preferences into the media, and that's what's affecting the media. That you don't want to support someone who normalizes these concepts. That's a very different perspective, though, than what I think she's saying so far. That would be the argument I would make, but I'm also not making this argument. You know what I mean? I'm not making this kind of video. So what do you think, Chloe? Are you on the... Where do you stand on that one?
I mean, I get where she's going with this, but I feel like, given everything she's already brought up in relation to this, it's going to be very interesting to see if she actually sticks to landing at any point with this.
Yeah, because so far she's kind of saying things, but she's not anchoring them perfectly yet. That's the problem. She's saying stuff that is compelling, but she hasn't gotten the connective tissue yet to really bring the point home. Well, let's see what she does.
Well, let's unpack both of these statements, starting with fiction does not equal reality. I think the urge to use "it's just fiction, not reality" as a defense has increased in popularity, honestly due to the recent and frankly outrageous examples of online fans openly harassing and doxing content creators. Like former Steven Universe storyboard artist Jesse Zook having to delete their Twitter over some art that they made. Or fans of Voltron sending death threats to the cast and writers because of a pairing they shipped between these two characters. The reason being, some fans falsely accused the ship of being pedophilic, which, first of all, I don't think they even had canonical ages at the time, but I think Shiro has been confirmed to be 25 and Keith is 18. Which is not what pedophilic means. So to a certain extent, I really understand why recently when people hear something or someone being accused of pedophilia, their first instinct may be to brush it off because the term has been thrown around loosely and incorrectly before. Which, can I just say, makes my job so frustrating.
I was talking about
before.
before,
When you hear about
that stuff is what's talked about. They cannot handle
really...
like problematic age gaps.
No, 100%.
For reacting.
Part of the reason why this is happening more and more frequently is that social media gives fans a much closer window into the production process of their show in a way that has just never been a thing before, and because it's new, we don't have a way to regulate it. The thing is, the internet kind of tricks you into thinking you're not talking to a real person. It's the same logic behind road rage. Like, most of you would never tell a stranger on the street to kill themselves because you would see their face crumple and there would be direct...
The guy 493, thank you for the super chat. Oh dear God, not the Voltron discourse, anything but that. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that, buddy. I feel that.
Oh, yeah. Look, there's been a lot more worser discourse in more recent years. That's arguably been worse than the Voltron discourse. We've literally had people in certain fandoms call for death threats over people because of the certain types of art of ships that they've made in recent years.
Hell,
it's gotten really worse since the Voltron discourse.
Hell, look at what the Star Wars fandom's going through right now. The Wikipedia editors are getting death threats from not all of them, but certain fans are saying very threatening messages to Wikipedia articles for changing a character's birth date in a canon where the birth date was not established yet. Death threats. Like, let's chill out a little bit, okay? Let them just chill a bit and just do what they gotta do, and let's chillax, let's take it easy, take a breath.
I will also make an additional argument in relation to what Noralities is talking about. It's the same kind of thing that people do when calling up like customer service lines or anything like that over the phone. totally not saying that because I have a bias because I work in that industry, but it's the same reason as to why people get very angry with people over the phone as opposed to keeping their cool when they're in person, because they feel like they can get away with it easier because it's just another person on the line. They don't have to physically see them in person, and therefore they have some kind of bias towards not really kind of caring about how they treat that person.
Exactly. You know, there's a famous, was it the Milgram experiment? Was that what it was called? The psychological experiment where they take two people, right? And the one person is in a booth, and the other person's in the other booth. There's a whole partition between them, so you can't see the person. And the person conducting the experiment says, okay, so we're going to have these flips. It's a memory test. So if they answer a question wrong, we want you to flip a switch. It's going to send a shock to the side, with each shock more progressively worse. And of course, it's all staged, but the guy flipping the switches doesn't know that. And they want to see how long he'll keep flipping switches until the guy on the other side presumably croaks. And they, with some bizarre pattern, it turns out the more partitions you have, the more easy it is to just keep flipping switches until the other guy is gone. And they sometimes even tell the person that they were being, it was all fake at the end of it. Morgan Shepard, thank you for the super chat. I can't stand fandom culture in general at this point. Every year it seems to get worse and more insular. And yeah, it's really awful. Like, it's really bad. I fully agree with this. Right now, what Noralities is saying, I'm on board with. This part right here, yeah. Do I think she could phrase it better? Of course, but we can always phrase any of our arguments better. That's besides the point. But the core of what she's saying at this segment of the video is solid.
Yeah.
I have nothing to really add there. The Milgram experiment. Yes, that's it. The Milgram experiment. That's the one.
Consequences for your actions that you would have to take immediate responsibility for. But the anonymity of being online takes the pressure of consequences off of the accusers. It's the mob mentality where you can point as many fingers as you want, all while knowing that you have complete safety in numbers. Recently, there's been a worrying trend where young people online have started to adopt this perception that if a person likes X problematic thing...
Jay Wong, thank you for the super chat. Were you talking about the Milgram experiment? Yes, that's it, the Milgram experiment.
Yeah.
What did I say, the Milton experiment? I said something stupid.
Milton.
I said the Milton experiment. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the Milgram experiment. There we go. Again, I remember ideas. This is why I do research, though, because I screw up on names all the time.
That's a mood, honestly. That is an internal mood.
No, I can tell you, like, all the different specifics, but I can't tell you what the name of the thing is unless I look it up. It's terrible. Even things I've seen a million times. Like, you asked me at the cuff, what's Sailor Neptune's name? I'm just saying this because I drew a blank on it while writing the script for an episode about this. Like, Melissa? Not, Michiru, obviously. But, like, Michiru. But, like, I'll be like, Misato? Makoto? No, that's the other one. It's like, it's even things I love. My brain doesn't work like that anyway. So, anyway.
Then they are automatically problematic in the same way, so it's okay to be mean to them. Which is obviously absurd, because that is not how human beings work.
A couple things in the comments that actually bring up a good point I want to bring up right now that I'm seeing. Discussing shortness. There is a common trend among knee-jerk online criticism to see a short character and assume they're a child. They're bringing up Uzaki-chan, who is a college-age character who is very short. There were a few workplace anime that featured that as well. That is a knee-jerk reaction some people have, but I think people have gotten better at reacting to it because without context, they may be drawn in a way that is childlike, but the character themselves is in their 20s, so it's not the same thing. And that's a whole discussion. I could probably do a whole video on that too, but I don't really want to. Anyway, let's keep going.
The ideology that we can only like media if it is perfect and completely unproblematic is impossible, because anything made by human hands is inherently biased and imperfect. Younger people already have a natural inclination to think in terms of black and white, good or bad, but they tend to grow out of it as their brains develop and start to realize that there are a lot of gray areas. People are not good or bad, they just do good or bad things. But there's a major flaw within that mentality because deep down, everybody believes that they're a good person. But you can be a good person that still does terrible things. Being a good person does not automatically excuse you from the critical examinations of your own actions and holding yourself accountable. Which is why these cases of online harassment are what I would describe as good people doing evil things because they believe it is right. But doxing, harassment, and death threats are never right or okay. You can like a piece of media and dislike a certain aspect, like the design or the opinions of the creator, and still not harass them. It is just that easy. I can enjoy My Hero Academia and also
it's gone in the reverse in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
you would think people would do better with that sort of thing, but no, it's gotten arguably so much worse in the 3 years since this video got made.
Oh yeah, no, and again, using media in both directions. Things have to be one extreme or the other, and it's even in leftist circles, the same thing has happened. Where people are saying, "Oh, we have to be progressive," but the progressive side of it becomes very restrictive. I've seen people on TikTok push for the Hays Code to come back, they're so into the purity angle of it that they want to restrict the artistic movements and statements of people they're claiming they want to protect.
Oh yeah,
so
it's messed up. Also. Also on the topic of this one, I'm loving that she's bringing up this part of it because this is one of the big reasons why I almost got turned off My Hero Academia for a while because of the fucking great boy. So let's see what she has to say about that.
You mean bisexual icon? Canonically bisexual.
I feel like he is basically a shonen trope that should have died 2 decades ago.
What? You mean Master Roshi wasn't enough?
Master Roshi was endearing to the point where he's goofy, but he also has genuine morals to him, and he actually is a credible fighter. Grape Boy, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure I don't remember him having a genuinely good fight in him.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Honestly, Master Roshi also has some good stuff too. He does in the movies, but in the show, and I love the part this is getting sidetracked. I think it's World's Strongest where the scientist is defrosted after 50 years and says, "Bring me the strongest fighter in the world, Master Roshi." And it's yes, for he is the strongest.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a very good thing for Roshi specifically because I feel like by that point in Z, he had become super outclassed by his students.
Which is funny because Super brings him back. Mineta is just irritating. Mineta isn't just a pervert, he's also annoying. And that's a key distinction.
Stormy Soup in the comments is actually making a really good point. A lot of puritanical children in fandom spaces that use progressive language to dress up very conservative beliefs. Yes, that is what I was talking about before with the pro-ship, anti-ship stuff. Yeah. Anti-shippers are very much using that to try and push conservative language in online spaces, and the fact that they use harassment campaigns to try and push that language to basically say, if you're doing these things, you deserve what you get. And I feel like that is arguably some of the worst things that has happened in the last 2 years because it has driven great creatives off the internet, and it has literally put disabled people in positions where they are unable to work and they are unable to feel comfortable in what they do. I feel like that is a very good point to make. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
100%. I missed that comment entirely. Thank you, Chloe, for bringing that to my attention. Yeah, 100%. I've had videos recently that were criticized by antis. There was a video I did a few weeks ago on queer rep about how we need more problematic queer rep because companies are commodifying it too much, etc. And a bunch of people on Twitter just shared the thumbnail around, acting as though I was saying that basically the thumbnail had Steven Universe, Nimona, I think Heartstoppers, Yuri on Ice, and a photo of John Waters, and the argument was you should stop watching shows just for kids. I'm like, but buddy, it's John Waters. He's on the thumbnail. Do you think Pink Flamingos is a kids movie? It's not about flamingos.
We are getting a bit more sidetracked from there.
Sidetracked,
Let's see what she's talking about with Minata.
Yeah, that's what Minata.
It's like the way Horikoshi tends to sexualize his female cast and critically talk about those issues and still not personally attack him.
And
Oh,
also,
so then I haven't talked
may
about
have understated this
Mineta
point
actually
last
there.
time because I kind
he was
of
more
assumed
just
it was
bring.
common
She was
sense.
more just bringing up the fact
But
that
because
like what happens with MHA in general, which is a good point to make, and it's another thing I feel like in Shonen that really needs to be more downplayed with that sort of thing. But moving on.
Yeah, that's a trope in Shonen. Like, I've made a whole video on fan service. For the most part, I'm not. I only care when it gets like when it's unpleasant to look at, Otherwise, I just tune it out at this point.
Of you watching right now might be a little younger, and I don't know who needs to hear this right now. Watching a show does not make you a bad person, period.
Yeah.
You can't let yourself feel bad about something that you had no way of knowing about. Full disclosure, part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because I went through this experience with Rurouni Kenshin. I loved the story as a kid.
Here we go.
I thought
Here we
its
go.
themes were fantastic.
Yeah.
I must have watched it all the way through at least twice. And it wasn't until years later that the news about the author came out, and when I finally heard about it, I was upset and I felt gross for ever liking it in the first place.
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah,
that
same,
if
actually.
I bought DVDs of
All right,
his
Crimson,
work
how's it
or
going?
manga
Saw
that
you
I
in the chat.
had accidentally given him money that he might have used to purchase child porn. And that
Yeah.
feeling was very hard to reconcile with. But eventually I did because I can't hold myself accountable for information that I don't know. Knowing about it now and changing my actions in the aftermath is what is important. I understand why "it's just fiction, not reality" is used to try and douse the fires of people getting upset and ruining people's lives over something that effectively matters very little. Whether your ship becomes canon or not is not worth ruining someone's life over. But this
Yeah,
is
that's a
not
good
the
point,
end of the
actually.
conversation, and there are
I think we should pause it right here just to discuss this for a bit. Because with her reaction to Kenshin, I'm fully on board. That was my reaction too.
Yeah, and the point that she made where she was just like, you can't hold yourself accountable for things that you weren't aware of, that is a very good thing because a lot of people, and we were talking about J.K. Rowling earlier with her transphobia and whatnot.
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely will say in relation to this, a lot of people I've had to actually educate on in relation to her transphobic beliefs with that one. A lot of people weren't really made aware of that one until I have actually brought that up. So I don't blame them for indulging and doing things like that without that knowledge.
Yeah.
However,
Harry
if
Potter's
they
weird for me,
continue
though. I made a video about it, so that's my opinions there.
Yeah, I will definitely say, using that as an example, as like a baseline for that sort of thing, if you're going to go ahead and not be aware of that and still indulge in it, you can't hold yourself accountable for that period. If you're aware of it and you're still indulging in a creator who has done very problematic things and continues to do those problematic things, and you are very much aware of that, and you're still in some way or another financially supporting them through their media, then that is the point where you need to be held accountable.
Yeah, but then again, what does that mean? What does held accountable mean for like consuming media? Do you just get criticized? Because I don't think it gets really complicated where it gets like, what does being held accountable entail? That's what gets complicated.
Yeah, that's sort of the gray area with that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it goes much deeper with stuff like Harry Potter because you can start to realize there is a lot of anti-Semitism and stuff like that. But I feel like if we go down that rabbit hole, it is definitely going to become like much far off track than where we're going with Kenshin.
Agreed. Crimson Ender in the comments, follow him. He's pretty cool. He's good people. He's bringing up Lady Knight the Brave, saying how they've talked about these kind of topics really well. I agree. Lean Not the Brave is really good. You should check them out. Their content's excellent. That being said, yeah, it's tricky. Like, it sucks when the thing you love is corrupted by the actions of the creator. It sucks. Oh, Size in the comments too. Nice. Separating art from the artist is a personal choice you can't force on other people. End of story, I say. And yeah, that's the thing too.
Yeah.
You can't force that on the other person. Every single person's level of comfort will be different. You know, saying with Kenshin, for example, and that's where it gets complicated. You know, Kenshin, yeah, for me personally, I can't really. I have the books right there, sure, but I can't revisit it because it's just so uncomfortable for associating the good memories I have with the work and the knowledge of the creator, and that's my personal choice. I can't force someone else to follow my personal choice because that's taking away their ability to choose. That's why when I say accountability, it's kind of weird because, like, what's accountable? You're going to say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with that? Okay, that's your operative. We're not going to fine you for reading Harry Potter, though. You know, like, it's just, that's your choice. I disagree with it, but I as long as you're not hurting other people, that's what it comes down to. If you hurt people, that's where it gets, that's a no. But, like, if all you're doing is just enjoying a piece of fiction, I'm not going to penalize you for that. It's, you know, it's just your choice to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the chat are bringing up Hogwarts Legacy with that one. The harassment campaigns that happen towards streamers doing that is in no way what I am talking about in relation to that.
Agreed.
That is one of the examples in which I will say anybody who participated in those harassment campaigns are not doing the right thing with that one, and they're actively harming the cause with that sort of thing. When I'm talking about, like, accountability, it's more just like making sure that, like, they're actively aware about what is going on, but, like, making sure that, like, they're aware that the choices that they are making with that sort of thing are actually, like, they have causation with that one from there.
Yeah, and the problem with Hogwarts Legacy is that all this sparked over a game that was kind of shitty at best anyway. It's what I think. It's not even a good game.
It was a mid Destiny clone at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it wasn't even.
Sorry, I cut you off there.
It was not great. People were realistically just making a huge kerfuffle over a mid Destiny clone, and yet.
Yeah,
it's still a year later, and people are just like saying, "Oh, it was good, actually." No, my dude, I've seen actual clips of that game. It looks so bad.
It was a very empty game. It was just hollow and vacant, and you could go through miles of the game and see nothing of value. And it was so short too. Anyway, I'm seeing Orson Scott Card, size being of Orson Scott Card. Yes, another great example. That for me is the example of it all, because Orson's the level of complicated feelings I have an Orson Scott Card. It's ridiculous. It just says so much there. The problem is, I think, and this goes into the core of Noralities' argument too, I think, going back to that, the tone that she's taking throughout this whole video is that your ethical consumption of media impacts reality. Yes, fiction is not reality, she's saying, but fiction affects reality. That's her core argument. The problem there is, though, that by saying... The problem there is that it's a very blanket statement, and it's lacking a lot of nuance. H.P. Lovecraft, another example right there. Although, the difference there is H.P. Lovecraft is dead. That makes a lot of difference in terms of the ethical consumption of his work. At least I think, anyway. There's, like, no debate there. He's dead. Who cares? He's not going to make any money off of it. But that's not okay. Let's keep going, because we can go into examples all day, and there's so many nuances. This is a topic I could go on for hours about, and it's so complicated because there is no one size fits all answer. Every example is different.
Basically,
yeah. And again, there's the phrase "there's no ethical consumption under capitalism," because even if it wasn't the specific creator, there's some guy up there who runs the company who's being awful. Sorry. Harvey Weinstein. Do you ever you want to watch Scream? Well, you're going to get money to Harvey Weinstein. Well, you were going to pay money to Harvey Weinstein. That's not your fault. There's no ethical reason. It gets into all these nuances, and it's very complicated. And Stardust Phantom, thank you for the super chat. This is why I religiously pirate everything Kenshin. Yes, if you enjoy it, pirate it. I fully endorse piracy on this channel. There's no argument there. Oh, that's a whole discussion, though. Anyway, back to the video.
Instances where it is worth examining problematic media, calling attention to the problems to the creator, and in some cases discontinuing your support for it because media does not exist in a vacuum.
And here's where I think I'm going to start
affects
disagreeing
reality.
more.
Lately, when people have this discussion about how fiction isn't reality, they always seem to neglect to mention the follow-up, which is fiction does.
The guy, thank you again for the super chat. Everyone forgot about Hogwarts when Zelda came out. Yeah, exactly. Because Zelda was a good game. Because Hogwarts wasn't a good game. Zelda, though, was fantastic. And then Baldur's Gate came out. Baldur's Gate, by the way, the Wizard game has like 16 spells in it, and like Baldur's Gate has hundreds of spells. And one's not a Wizard-centric game. Also, Baldur's Gate has Karlach, who right there already blows away any character in Hogwarts Legacy. Because you remember Karlach a year later. You don't remember anyone from Hogwarts Legacy a year later? Are you kidding? What, Simon Pegg's character? I don't remember the name.
Does actually affect reality. Which, this is not my opinion, this is a fact. One of the most notorious examples is the 1915 silent film Birth of a Nation. Some of you might be familiar with it because it single-handedly inspired the rebirth and resurgence of the KKK only a month after its release.
Exactly what we were talking about before.
And you might ask yourself, how did this happen? In the film, there is a black character played by a white man in blackface, and he pursues a white woman who is running from him because of his stated desire to get married. Under the presumed threat of sexual assault, she chooses to kill herself instead, and when the Klan learns about this, they lynch him. The framing of the film weaponized white women's sexual autonomy as something that was being threatened by sexually aggressive black men, and that white women were something that needed to be protected at all costs by white men. It framed the Klan as heroic Proud Boys who were upholding white American justice by protecting their women. And that message resonated with a certain group of people. At the time.
All right, let's take a pause on that. I did mention Birth of a Nation before as a good example of how media can affect reality. But here's where I disagree, and it's a fundamental element of Noralities' argument. Just because media can affect reality doesn't mean that media will affect reality. Birth of a Nation is studied because it's an exceptional example. It's not the trend. It's the exception. And there were so few films at that time that this was one of the most widely watched films in terms of percentage of people who watched the movie, what they saw. This was widely watched, widely seen, and this is very complicated. This is not a topic that can be easily discussed. Because the question then becomes, this film is an example of a media affecting reality. Is it proof that all media affects reality? I wouldn't say that. But I would say it is a good example of affecting reality. It's... Okay, a more lighthearted example, Sai mentioned in the chat, Jaws making people overly afraid of sharks is a good example, though. Yeah, that's a fair point. Jaws destroyed beach attendants, I think, for a good decade after it happened, after it came out. Anyway, any thoughts on that, Chloe, or... Or you not wanting to touch that one with a pole?
Yeah, this is once again one of those ones I'm just not going to touch because I do not feel like I am well equipped to do this.
That's fair. You ever took a film class and had to watch Birth of a Nation, and the teacher's like uncomfortably enthusiastic about showing you this movie?
I don't believe our film studies class ever handled Birth of a Nation, mainly because I don't feel like it really I don't feel like it's really relevant. Well, I don't feel like the curriculum would have thought it would be relevant for Australians to look into Birth of a Nation.
Oh, good point, too. I didn't even think of that. Adrian Parchman, thank you for the super chat. Which came first, the chicken or the egg principle? That's a good question with the... Well, with Birth of a Nation especially, the Klan already existed in the United States before the movie came out. But they were dying out, quote unquote, as an organization. As an organization, they were dying out, but they were still obviously racists all over the place. But this was just reinvigorated it. Anyway.
Tail end of the Civil War, slavery was completely abolished in America in 1865, to which the
Not technically
KKK
true.
had originally been formed to as backlash, before being suppressed later in 1871. This was the first movie played in the White House, and it glorified the Ku Klux Klan by painting them as heroes, and now we still have to deal with the KKK being a thing up until 1944, and also literally now. Thanks! I hate it! If I tried to list
oversimplified, but yeah,
every
that's
example
basically it.
of media that has
Yeah,
had a
it kinda
traceable effect
oversimplified
on
the point,
reality,
but
then
a
I
few
would
points
literally
lost.
be here.
There were still massive amounts of bigotry in the South, even without the Klan specifically as an organization.
Yeah.
That it didn't just vanish and then come back. It was just this organization was birthed, revitalized, but there was still tons of racists in the South for decades, making it worse for black people. So it's not. It's kind of a oversimplified, but you're right. But there's a few details missing.
All
Yeah.
day. I could talk about Bambi causing deer hunting rates in the US to drop by half, the movie Fight Club being the impetus for New York's underground fighting circuit, George Orwell's works giving us a term to describe a very specific type of dystopia in a single word, Orwellian. Science fiction often has influence on
Tracy's on
actual
sci-fi.
scientific innovation and technology. Life imitates art because art affects humans, and it's silly to say that it doesn't. When someone starts crying or laughing during an emotional part of a movie, informing them that the situation is not real is meaningless because their feelings
Great usage
are
of
real.
Tiki.
Obviously,
Tiki's great.
humans are capable of critical comprehension, but we are not infallible, and media does inarguably have an effect on how we perceive reality in both positive and negative ways. This is why positive representation in media is so important. It's because, like it or not, it has a direct impact on the human experience. Marginalized groups.
Okay, let's take a step back a second here. They are, again, like a lot of this video, they are components I agree with, but not to the intensity that she's stating it. This is tricky because she's approaching it from a very blunt standpoint, but the problem is that she's leaving out a lot of details. And the bigger problem is trends in media more than anything else. Yes, Bambi, Jaws, as we mentioned in the chat before, Orwell, the impact is very different. Creating a word for dystopia isn't like George Orwell didn't create the dystopian. The dystopian existed before George Orwell. First off, Brave New World predates 1984, but secondly, Orwellian is just the term we use to describe something that Orwell himself was describing in real life. Like 1984 was made to discuss Stalin and Stalinism. It was not a fantasy that he concocted in his head. That was reflecting his reality. So we just had another word for it. Bambi, yeah, because you had people empathize with deer. Of course, they're going to stop hunting deer. Just like how the removal of cigarettes in film the removal of cigarettes in film correlated with the drops of smoking rates. Deer hunting correlated following Bambi in terms of a drop. Correlation. The tough thing is causation. There's very few cases where you can point to something and go, that movie caused this. Birth of a Nation is one of those few examples where you can say this movie caused this to happen, because you can directly tie them together. But it's very hard to say that media correlates with anything. In fact, Jaws helped correlated with some of the development in shark sciences, actually, because who wrote Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws, he was so horrified that of the negative actions taken towards sharks that he devoted the rest of his life essentially to marine biology and helped finance and helped push for shark sciences to be studied. And now we know more about sharks today than ever before in the 70s. So it can affect things in different ways, but that's also not directly caused by Jaws. That was Peter Benchley acting on his own accord. So the problem here is we're losing a lot of nuance here. And trends in media are very different from specific media pieces that cause something to happen. That's the trick. And the problem is we are conflating a lot of different ideas together and making them sound like they're of equal merit or similar. And that's very complicated. It's not that I'm saying her heart's in the right place. She's trying to make some good points, but the problem is I think that she's oversimplifying her discussion, and in doing so missing out on a lot of the nuance of the complicated conversation, which is tough when you're making a video essay about it. That's my thoughts. What do you think so far, Chloe?
I mean, the points that she's making are genuinely good. I'm going to continue saying that.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the general execution, I feel like, has just been the very flawed sort of thing that has really kind of been the major problem here. And I feel like we're about to get into another one with this one here, where it feels like, while she may definitely make some really good points here with this one, I feel like the overall message is going to be lost in a sense.
Yeah, I think it's articulation. I think she's trying to say something really clever, and she's just not finding the right words for it. And she's choosing words that kind of, and again, it's tone, it's style. Her heart's in the right place. This is not a Lily Orchard situation. It's not a Doug Walker situation. She's earnest about this, and she's trying to approach it from a good perspective. The problem is, I think she's just not. She needed this script needed another draft. It needed another to really polish off the exceptions, to really pull back a little. And again, comments are saying, what does that have to do with cancel culture? Yeah, that's another good point too. It doesn't seem like it's tying in with her thesis. It's making a good point, but that point is in isolation. Because also, what's her thesis? That art imitates life, that art isn't reality, and that art affects reality. Those are her 2 points. But that doesn't really have anything to do with cancel culture. There's a disconnect there. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about it. There's a core disconnect from her argument. It's a lot of good ideas in isolation, but it's messy in execution is the problem. But I can't fault her for the attempt. That's the thing. I cannot fault her for the attempt. She's trying to say something good. I just don't agree with her execution.
Groups being humanized by television or film is not only good for those groups to see themselves represented, but because it also affects how other people perceive them.
That's also true.
Also, I never do this, but seriously, if anyone comments again on this video, it's just fiction, not reality, or if you don't like it, don't watch it. Do not harass them, but feel free to just call them out on not actually watching the video all the way through. Please, please be good. I am trusting you all on this. If you are mean about it, I will be very disappointed. Alright, so in hindsight, obviously making a film right after the Civil War glorifying the Ku Klux Klan was a bad move. This movie probably shouldn't have been made at all. Not for any lack of trying, obviously. There were ultimately unsuccessful attempts to ban the film by the NAACP. Boston's NAACP and Trotter argued that the film was a threat to public safety, that it heightened racial tensions and could incite violence, which is exactly what it ended up doing. Thanks. I hate it. But creators can't...
The problem there is that was their intention. They wanted to make the film that awful. So
yeah,
that's the problem. We can recognize it's going to cause problems, but if the people making it want to escalate things, D.W. Griffith claims that was not his intention, but it's hard to really say. And again, the problem is it shouldn't have ever been made. Yes, but it was made, and there's nothing you can really do to change that. That's the problem. It exists. It's a thing that any of us can watch right now if we really wanted to. And yeah, it's awful, but we now live in a reality where that exists, and there's nothing we can really do about it. Jay Wong, thank you for the super chat. She should have researched into cultivation theory. Yeah, would have been a good idea. That would have been a good idea. Anyway.
Can't always predict the scope of the consequences of what they're making until after it's too late.
Once
Okay.
something has been published, you can never take it back. Take, for instance, the 1975
Jaws.
film
Here we go.
Jaws by Steven Spielberg, which sparked a huge wave of fear and anti-shark sentiment that have haunted human perceptions of sharks to this very day. This film ended up impacting the environment in a way that I don't think a lot of people are even quite aware of. Shortly after its release in the 1980s, when the sword fishery collapsed, fishermen decided to market the sharks, and the shark fin trade skyrocketed.
Yep.
Shark finning
I didn't
is
even know about
a
that. Damn.
truly horrible
Yep.
practice, which involves cutting off a living shark's fin and throwing the animal back into the sea to slowly die. It is a ghoulish practice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Even
is
though
that why there's
sharks
a
are
scar in fucking
incredibly
Finding
important
Nemo?
to our
Yep.
ecosystem.
And Peter Benchley very famously was horrified by this and spent most of the rest of his life in marine biology in reaction to stuff like this, which
Oh,
he
that's
felt-
blowing my mind right now.
he felt personally Now, the problem is Peter Benchley himself personally felt accountable for this. The other problem is this. You can't prove Jaws caused this. You can say this happened after Jaws came out, but this is a key element to this. This incident started in the late 80s. Jaws came out in 1975. It's like 10, 15 years time gap between the events of the publication, the release of Jaws the movie, and this incident. And, for your shark fin soup, this is what happens. There's many reasons why this could have skyrocketed too outside of Jaws. Increased trade, international. For example, in Japan, for example, shark fin soup is more prevalent. So it's possible that the increased role Japan played in the world economy resulted in a demand for this being upped, The key thing is Jaws arguably influenced this trend, or the correlation between them happened, but it's hard to say caused. Caused is the word I'm having an issue with. It's rough. It's hard to prove one or the other, but I digress. That's where it gets tricky, because this is connected with Jaws, but to say that connection is causation, that's where I have the issue. It's just tricky. And again, if I have seen footage of sharks being definned, it's Sai's leaving. See you later, Sai. I've seen footage of this happening, it is gruesome and grisly, and some of the most disturbing stuff I've seen happen to an animal. It's awful. And they just drop them back in the ocean, and they can't swim. They drown on their own gills. It's awful. But comments are also bringing up, Mark Martin Magma M3. This also reminds me of a story where the guy said the wolves had an alpha and so on, and wolves pack. But the same man later checked up on his work and found that the whole thing was bunk. Yeah, exactly. And this correlates with terminology we use today, or causes it to an extent. It's all related, but the problem is she's just not connecting these enough. That's the problem.
And you're more likely to be killed by a vending machine than a shark.
Yeah.
This film undoubtedly warped many people's perceptions of sharks into monstrous killing machines.
See, that's the argument.
A big one. And any shark expert in the world will tell you it's a killer. It's a man-eater.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine.
An eating machine. I love this movie so much.
Machine does.
I could quote this movie back and forth. It's terrible.
But what I find fascinating
Love
is
it
not
so
just
much.
the audience response to this film, but the author's response to his new legacy. Peter Benchley,
here we
the
go.
author
Peter
of the
Benchley.
1974 novel the film is based on, said, "Knowing what I know now, I could never write that book today, because sharks don't target human beings and they certainly don't hold grudges." Benchley was horrified by the anti-shark backlash, and especially by the surge of shark finning, and committed himself to the shark conservation movement until his death in 2006.
Yep.
So is that true? You feel like you couldn't write that novel now, Jaws, knowing what you know?
No, got to remember how long ago that was. There was no Earth Day when I was writing that book. There was no environmental consciousness at all. We assumed the oceans were forever. They were invulnerable to man. That nobody could do anything to really hurt the ocean. And so environmental sense really didn't exist, and nobody knew anything about sharks. Now, we still don't know a great deal, but what we do know, I couldn't demonize the animal.
Benchley
Yeah.
couldn't have predicted that his novel would be adapted by Steven Spielberg, and inadvertently create the summer blockbuster or a generation of fear and animosity for a single animal. But he did change his actions in the aftermath, and that is so important. When authors create a story, you have to be conscious of what you are putting out into the world, because unintentional or not, you may end up changing or affirming people's opinion on reality.
I do feel like it's a little problematic comparing Jaws' influence to Birth of a Nation, though, because positives did come from Jaws. Yes, Jaws terrified a whole generation of people with the water, but it also did inspire many to become biologists. You know, marine biology skyrocketed because of Jaws. That's what I think. So, I don't know. I get what you're saying. I agree with that part, but I think correlating it with Birth of a Nation is a bit of a step too far, but anyway.
No one is going to be
Oh, classic Luigi fan. Thank you so much for the super chat. That's fantastic. Also, like, animal torture like this is unfortunately extremely common. While the popularity of Jaws couldn't have helped, something tells me shark finning would happen regardless. And not only would it have happened regardless, it was happening before as well. That's the thing as well. Shark finning was already a thing that was happening constantly. So the problem becomes, again, correlative. This didn't cause shark finning. It maybe sped it up more, but it was already happening to begin with. Peter Benchley, thankfully, and a lot of what we know about sharks now, again, is in part thanks to Peter Benchley's efforts. Not entirely, but he did spark a lot of movements in that favor. And again, Jaws is also a much better movie than the book is. I'll be a little biased there. You ever read Jaws? The book's not as good as the film. This is one of the rare occasions I think the movie is vastly better than the book.
Obviously, but this is why it's so important to do research to avoid falling into certain negative tropes or pitfalls. But
okay, there was no research though for Jaws. That's the problem. There was very little information we had available.
Yeah,
that's a little. You can't just say, "Hey, do more homework." There was nothing to read. They wrote the books on sharks after this.
Exactly.
You can't just go to the library and say, "Hey, I want a book on sharks." Oh wait, there is none. I guess I'll go online. Oh wait, what's the internet? You know. So Benchley was right there. He said, "Listen, we had nothing about this. We couldn't." I don't know.
The authorial response to falling into these pitfalls.
Also, the other problem is the implication that Birth of a Nation was written because of ignorance. That was not the case. They were just bigots. That's a very different problem. Birth of a Nation was made out of actual bigotry. They were unrepentant. D.W. Griffith claimed he was sorry about it afterwards, but that's more of a that's a discussion that's an expert on film history can tell you about. I just know what I know. But as far as I know, the movie Intolerance is his counter-argument to Birth of a Nation, where he casts, Anyway, but, shark fin soup's a Chinese delicacy. Okay, so yeah, it was happening for decades. I thought Japan was doing it more, but China? Okay, so obviously China, their population exploded in the 20th century. A massive increase in population. You can correlate the increase of shark fin soup there, There's other things you can pick out of isolation and say this caused that. So,
that I think is so important, especially when it comes to how we view and decide to use cancel culture.
Okay, here we go.
Even with the best of intentions, writers are not perfect, and sometimes they will make mistakes not out of deliberate malicious intent, but just ignorance. In The Adventure Zone, which is a Dungeons & Dragons podcast by the McElroy brothers and their dad, which I personally love, in one of the early arcs, the Dungeon Master, Griffin McElroy, accidentally stumbled into the bury your gaze trope, wherein one of his queer, non-playable characters' story unfortunately ended in tragedy. And when people online told him about how that's kind of a loaded, shitty trope, he literally changed it and made efforts to not let that happen again. And he did, which he couldn't have done if he had been canceled over it. The problem with cancel culture is that it removes any possibility of growth. That because of something someone said or did years ago, that they should be punished.
Super chat. The guy, thank you for super chat. If I remember correctly, the film itself is on the side of the marine biologist. The shark is pretty firmly established to be a fringe case. For Jaws, 100% yes. So, I forget the character's name. Yeah, the humans are the protagonists. All they want to do is stop the shark from eating people. The shark is being territorial, they say in the movie. And the big issue isn't so much that the shark is territorial and it's an animal that's just hurting people. It's more that it's feeding there because it's hungry. It's just satisfying its biological functions. The real villain is the mayor for just allowing for just ignoring the problem until it becomes too much for him to ignore and his own kids are put at risk. That's the real antagonist of the movie, so to speak. Anyway. People are saying, okay, so, I just noticed a comment here. So Jay Wong, D.W. Griffith's intolerance, while better than birth, was actually a statement on how black and anti-racist critics are intolerant of him. Oh,
yeah.
No. I didn't realize that. I saw that doesn't even surprise me, though. Again, like I said, D.W. Griffith he claimed he was sorry about elements of the film, but I'm not going to defend D.W. Griffith on this one. Oh, that is not surprising whatsoever, and totally exactly what I expect from the man who made Birth of a Nation. Oh, my goodness. Anyway.
Finished. Forever, because the internet is timeless. It assumes that all problematic elements are created equally and have been intentionally created when often that is not true. Honestly, I'm not a fan of cancel culture as a whole because it is a complicated action that needs a careful case-by-case examination of each individual's circumstances. But it's often used as an almost automatic response to bully anyone for doing something you don't personally like. What I'm hopefully trying to get to the core
Just
of
in case
here
of using a
is
silent voice
people
there.
shouldn't be
seriously.
canceled over just being ignorant or misinformed or because their work had an unpredictable effect on the people reading it. In Griffin McElroy and in Peter Benchley's case, their actions were unintentional and they made efforts to undo the damage they had done. However, what do you do when an author is deliberately creating a work with malicious content or conduct, when they have been informed of the harm that they are causing and still refuse to change? Well, that's when things start to get a bit messy. Death of the author.
Here we go.
Death of the author is a term coined in a 1967 essay by Roland Barthes, which, to put it very simply, means that the authorial intent should have no impact on an audience's reading or interpretation of a text. Which, frankly, I think people have been over-employing this idea lately because it's easy. It takes all of the responsibility off of the reader to do any further research or to examine a text outside of their own worldview. Much like canceling, I think death of the author cannot be used as a catch-all. It needs to be applied in a case-by-case basis. Like, H.P. Lovecraft was racist, even for the time he was born in.
We were talking about that before.
He's dead.
Exactly.
Buying or engaging with his work is
I just said it before.
going to be harmless. By buying or reading his work, you are not giving your money and support to a person who you know to be racist. It's going to his estate or whatever.
No, I think it's public domain now, I think. Meow Neon, thank you for the super chat. What's with DWs and just being the worst? D.W. Griffith.
Oh, is that an
the Daily
Arthur
Wire,
reference?
D.W. from Arthur. Exactly. That last one's the worst one right there.
That's immediately where I went to with that one. And I'm just like, was that a fucking Arthur reference?
Yeah, D.W. from Arthur is terrible. I will trade.
In 2024, I love that.
I love it. That right there, love it. Yeah, no, Arthur in general. Yeah, I love Arthur. What are we talking about? So actually, Crimson just made a good point in chat too. The context a piece was made in is very important, I think. Yeah, agreed. The context is important. Now, Lovecraft was for his time exceptionally racist. Like, even by his standards, he was unusually racist then. He was also really a strange little man who had a very depressing life. And, like, that's not apologizing for Lovecraft, but knowing how strange his life was and how bizarre he was as a person, it kind of things start to make more sense. he didn't take math because he didn't have the constitution for math. Like, and in all of his work, math terrifies him. He's a very complicated character in history. But a work also the thing is, he was also very isolated. You know, it's hard to unlearn bigotries if you're that isolated. When someone today is bigoted, there's so many more resources that they can use to educate themselves or be taught what this thing is wrong. And there's many avenues which can further you down a rabbit hole of ignorance and intolerance, you know? Yeah, all of Lovecraft's works in the public domain, which is perfect, because I could write a Lovecraft story if I wanted to. N.K. Jemisin, for example, wrote a fantastic Lovecraft pastiche that reclaimed a lot of the racist imagery in a way to discuss racial issues. It's very complicated. So, you know, didn't have the Constitution math. Yeah, it's an OSP reference, I know, but it's still that's the excuse they used. It's a real thing. Look it up. Anyway.
You can read the text not
Yeah,
knowing
math
the
does
name
suck.
of his cat, Google at your own risk,
Yeah,
and
that's
enjoy
fair.
the iconic horror. But you may still end up surprised when confronted by racially loaded aspects that are in the text.
Throughout the text.
And I
Yeah.
guess if I'm talking about Death of the Author, then I also have to mention J.K.
There you
Rowling,
go.
which I know,
Here we go.
I know, I am also sick of hearing and talking about this. I promise I will keep it quick.
Oh,
If you just
Crimson, no, it is not. It's not Lovecraft Country. It's I think I have it right here somewhere. It's the city. Like, we live beneath the city we live in. Oh, what's the name of the book? It's gonna drive me crazy. I'm gonna look it up. But it's N.K. Jemisin. It's not Lovecraft Country. It's I'm drawing a blank on the name. I was saying before, I always am terrible with book names. It's right here too, which is annoying me. Remind me at the end of this. I'll try finding the N.K. Jemisin book. I have a copy of
examine
it
the
too.
text of Harry Potter, you're not going to find anything really offensive in there. In hindsight, there are some interesting things worth noting.
I debate that.
Like the stairs to the Gryffindor girls' dorm forcibly denying entry to any biological male students, which would that exclude trans women and non-binary folks if it's only going by biological gender? And there is no non-gendered
I love
word
the Final
for
Fantasy,
magical person,
you go.
only the binary witch or wizard. Knowing nothing of J.K. Rowling's personal opinions, you could probably enjoy Harry Potter guilt-free. However, you would have had to have been living under a rock to not have heard about her recent transphobic tweets that started as late back as December in 2019 and then culminated in a string of her doubling down in June of 2020. Because that was what we needed in June of 2020. A millionaire author telling trans people that she would be on their side if they were being discriminated against. What do you mean if? You are literally discriminating against them right now on the basis of them being trans. I'm not going to unpack everything she said. That's not what this video is about. If you want to know more,
Yeah.
Lindsay Ellis and ContraPoints have both made excellent videos about this already. J.K.
Yes.
Rowling
Yeah.
being a
Yeah.
trans exclusionary radical feminist and using her platform of millions of people to demonize trans women. By doing this, by spewing
get to
hate
bed. Have a
speech
good night, man.
towards trans people
Or-
under
or-
the
yeah, have a good
thinly
night.
veiled
That's what you
guise
think.
of scientific evidence and feminism, she is putting a marginalized group who are already in a vulnerable position more at risk. Statistically, trans women
arguably
were
gone worse
already
since
more
this
likely
video.
to be
Oh
victims
yeah, no.
of assault
It's actually funny because it's like, this is the mild stuff. She's doubled down so much harder since then.
Oh yeah, she has gotten so much more worse. Again, it's why I was making those comments before, where it's just like, she's still making money off of Harry Potter to this day. So
Well, she might sell it off. There's a rumor she's going to sell the rights to Warner Brothers. So then so that's going to go into Zavlon's pocket instead.
You know what?
I'm
You
not
know
sure.
what? I don't. You know what? That's not as bad. But I'm also just sitting here, just thinking to myself, do I want to give the Slav money?
Yeah, they're both terrible for different reasons. They're doing terrible different things, but
Also, Kura, Lindsay Ellis is still making videos. She's just doing them on Nebula now.
yeah, she did something on the Beatles, I think, recently, right?
Yeah.
And she has a book coming out. Like, I think I just saw marketing for it the other day. It might be out by this point. I'm not even sure. The
So
first
Lizzie
book
Ellis is still around. She's just not on YouTube anymore.
Yeah, and doesn't she have like ties to? I guess she's like one of the co-owners of Nebula, or like one of the.
Yes.
Yeah, so she's still heavily involved in the online space. Just she's taking a backseat a little bit to focus on, I guess, more passion projects. Anyway.
Of transphobia. And J.K. Rowling's tweets are normalizing and excusing that behavior to millions of people.
It's almost cute
Between
how, in
2019
hindsight,
and
how
2020,
much worse it's gotten
anti-trans
since
hate crimes
then.
have increased 60%
Yeah.
according
Oh, God.
to the UK's Home Office. This surge can be attributed to an increase in reporting, but it is also influenced by the increasing hostility in UK-wide media towards trans identity and communities. And knowing all of this, I cannot support her. To be clear, I am not going to harass her. I'm just not going to engage with anything she makes. And I'm not going to spend money on her work because one of the charities she supports could be anti-trans, and I don't want to even indirectly contribute to harming trans people. I loved Harry Potter as a child, but I'm not a child anymore, and I care more about trans rights than I do about a book about wizards.
Again, made a whole video about this topic,
hopefully I'm
so I
starting
won't
to
repeat
make
myself.
my point clear here about why this is so important and why the decision to use cancel culture is a spectrum that should be used carefully. If you think about it as a line chart, then dead people would be in the middle. Like, nothing is going to happen if you cancel them. You can enjoy their work, but you may want to know ahead of time if they were an asshole just so you aren't surprised by it. And
I
on the
will
far
say
left,
this. I will pause this.
Yeah.
I feel like you could sort of make that argument towards John Lennon because of his past with being a known abuser of women, but it makes no difference because John Lennon has been dead for 3 decades at this point.
Exactly.
Well, actually 4 decades now that I think about it. Because he was killed in the 80s, right?
I think he was killed 1980. I think almost exactly. I know where it was.
Yes.
I've
so it's been
in the area where he was killed in, so it's crazy.
Yeah, so dude's been dead for 4 decades. You bringing up the fact, people bring up the fact that he was a known woman abuser. It's a good fact to bring up, but it's not really going to impact anything about his estate.
Yeah. Also, I find it funny how she keeps referencing the Shadows out of Innsmouth, which is one of Lovecraft's less overtly vile works. Like, yeah, it's still vile in the conceptual. It's ultimately about interracial marriage and Lovecraft's fear of it. But like he's even more racist in his older works, like by a mile. It's wild how that happens. If Joanne sells Harry Potter, I would love to see other writers explore the wizarding world and try to fix a lot of the issues. Yeah, again, I think there's potential in the idea, but another writer has to deal with the world building. That's the thing. Anyway,
honestly, I feel like Harry Potter as an idea would be so much better if Joanne wasn't fucking writing it.
The problem is she's just too centered on her own worldview, and that's the problem. She just has other perspectives in to change things up. But she's very protective of her own IP, so, Anyway, back to this.
People who literally have done nothing wrong. And then next to that, I would put people who did a bad thing, but unintentionally, and they tried to fix it afterwards.
Griffin McElroy and Peter Benchley would be here. Oh, and also Nintendo during the Jinx controversy and the Porygon episode accidentally triggering seizures.
That's a gray area. That's a gray area there.
That's a big gray area. We're not touching that one.
Yeah, especially Jinx. Porygon, that's different. That was seizure stuff, but like...
They messed up, but they completely took responsibility for their actions and changed them in the future to try and repair the damage as best as they could. And then we get to the midpoint where this person was kind of a dickhead, but he's dead, so it doesn't matter. Like, you gotta use your own personal judgment for these. Like, is canceling them even worth it? Will it accomplish anything? Is the book that they wrote still perpetuating harmful ideologies? I don't know. Then finally, on the right side, we get to a person did or said a bad thing a long time ago. Again, you have to consider the context of when the statement or action was made. If it was brought to light, did they apologize sincerely? Are they in a position of power? Because maybe they shouldn't be. And then next to that, I would put people who are promoting hate speech or donating money to hate
Orson
groups.
Scott, yeah,
People
again.
like J.K. Rowling and Orson Scott Card actively being transphobic and homophobic are hurting the LGBT community, and they shouldn't be supported. And then
Orson Scott Card's money has gone directly to conversion camps, quite frankly. So, there you go. He's hurt people you may know in your very life. Also, yeah, comments are asking, what does it mean to cancel someone? Like, what does that mean? It doesn't... Canceling is such a vague term. I don't know.
Yeah,
All the
it
way on the
always
right.
has been and continues to be such a vague term
Yeah.
because of where it has gone with that one from there. Like,
Mhm.
when people bring up the term cancel culture, it's definitely turned into such a dog whistle, and it's such a nothing burger at this point. It's just like, what are you even talking about when you say you're getting canceled or you're a victim of cancel culture in a sense?
Exactly. Also, I'm seeing people discuss Neil Gaiman's Harry Potter book. It's called The Books of Magic. It's a DC graphic novel. It's good. It's in the Sandman continuity. That's some good stuff. Also, if you want a Harry Potter-like story, Legends of Earth, the Legends of Earthsea, Earthsea, the Earthsea cycle. Ursula K. Le Guin's work. Read those. Those are fantastic. Deals with Wizarding School. Much better than Harry Potter.
Also, I do want to make
where-
mention of people bringing up Jinx in there. They are correct. Technically, Jinx isn't racist. It's
Yeah.
actually Ganguro, which is a different kind of subculture in Japan.
Exactly.
It just doesn't really translate that well in Western culture, which is why I feel like Nintendo needs to backpedal on it because of how it can be portrayed outside of Japan.
Exactly.
Because like you ask anybody what they think of when they see Jinx, they don't immediately think of Ganguro.
Yeah, especially because these... Also, most people don't know what Gengaro is. That's the thing, too. It's like...
Yeah.
It's like... in Japan, yeah, you know what it is. Because it's the makeup style, it's the lips, it's the everything. What was that one manga? Was it Peach Girl? Was that the one?
Yeah, Peach Girl.
Yeah, that dealt with... that was the first time I ever heard of Gengaro in any media, period. So... when you're a kid, you're going to have no idea what that is, especially in the 90s where, internet wasn't really that long. People may know Japan, but they wouldn't know, like, fashion trends in Japan. There was a level of disconnect. So, yeah. Anyway, but Jinx wasn't racist. Actually, though, if you want to read some really crazy cases of censorship, not crazy, like wild cases of censorship, look up some of the stuff that happened with Pokemon cards in the late 90s. There was a ton of wild things that were pushed back against. You wouldn't even expect it. People were upset with Alakazam for having spoons because of a cult connection. Some countries banned Alakazam because he had a star in his head. Just wild stuff.
This person absolutely should be canceled is people who do a actual crime, like the author of Rurouni Kenshin possessing 100 DVDs of child porn, or Tatsuya Matsuki, the writer of the manga Act Age, groping a middle schooler.
Yep.
Alright, so I don't know how much clearer I have to be about my opinion on this issue when an author you like does a crime, and I mean like a crime that hurts people, not something like shoplifting or embezzlement or whatever. You should withdraw your support from them because, like it or not, if you don't, you are supporting the behavior that crimes are okay if that person is famous enough. You may have heard a version of silence is a form of approval used in reference to social reform. There's a version attributed to Plato. There's a version commonly incorrectly attributed to Abraham Lincoln, but is actually by Ella Wheeler Wilcox, an American author and poet. To sin by silence when we should protest makes cowards of men. But my favorite is by Martin Luther King Jr. from his speech on the war in Vietnam. A time comes when silence is betrayal. I cannot, under any circumstances, understand how people still try to separate the art from the artist in circumstances like Nobuhiro Watsuki, the author of Rurouni Kenshin, after knowing what he's done. Why would you still want to read anything this guy made after knowing that? Why would his story be more important to you than his consumption of media of children being sexually abused? please try to conduct yourself with a little bit more empathy. How to move forward.
Yeah, that's... You first, sorry.
Look, it goes back to what I've been saying in this entire video. Noralities is making really great points in this video. She's making arguably some really great points and arguably just making it in a way that really needs to be said in the broader anime community as a whole, because there are a lot of problematic mangakas and anime directors and whatnot that have made such great works. Unfortunately, the way that she continues to say this sort of thing comes across as super preachy about pretty much saying, why would you still want to consume that after knowing what he has done? My response to that is simple. Because the story that was told before I knew about that, before that knowledge was made present to me, is such an impactful work.
Yeah.
And while I do struggle with that at points, I look at that, I can definitely see that in the lens of this was something that I can look back and I can just think to myself, right, okay, I get this creator did make some very awful things. Does this impact my enjoyment of what was made beforehand? So I guess my thought process on it is that I can get where people can come from, where they look back on a lot of things that they enjoyed and they can still look at that. Like, I don't judge people for still indulging or saying that if people still go back and say, oh, I liked Harry Potter though, I can see where they're coming from, but I disagree with that. Purely because of what I've mentioned with Harry Potter previously. But in the case of Rurouni Kenshin as a story is great. I just know for a fact that I would never again want to look at any sort of continuation, like with the Hokkaido arc that has been going on that went on since 2017. I looked at that, it went, no, that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. And, to an extent, too, and chat's bring up a few good points. I think I want to bring up a couple points that chat's mentioned, I think, in general. So, Crimson brought up a point in chat that watching Kenshin is not going to undo what he did,
Yeah.
Nothing anyone can do can ever undo that. And the other thing I want to bring up, this was brought by Megaritz, is she criticizing the act of continuing to pay for someone's work, or is she criticizing reading it even by pirating? Because those are two different things. And she doesn't make a distinction. She kind of conflates the two. I don't think she's considered piracy as an option in this video yet, which is a genuine argument. I know it's like a half joking, let's pirate everything from people we don't like, but it is an actual argument to make. And then the problem becomes also, what about dead authors who commit crimes? Again, and this is the kind of discussion I see also with discussing someone like, say, Roman Polanski, who won an Academy Award after fleeing the country for his crimes. It's just... Adrian Parchman, thank you for the super chat. Library are a thing too. Yeah, libraries have the work. So borrow from the library. You're not paying the author anything. Now, granted, library support can come back to the author in some monetary way, but if you really want to read the work, or have to read the work, because there are academic reasons to revisit works of fiction written by terrible people too. Let's be fair about that as well.
I will also say this. If you do want to own it physically, there is also the option of buying it pre-owned. Thrift books is an option from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or there's thrift shops. You can go to some anime conventions sell books secondhand. You can buy it there. The problem is, a lot of it is the core idea of Noralities' argument I don't disagree with. It's the execution of that idea I disagree with. That continually is the problem I have here. The problem I'm having with this is that I agree with, in broad strokes, the general idea that she's arguing. It's the way she's arguing it where I have differences of opinion. And a lot of it has to do with, I think she's just not taking a very nuanced perspective on this. Anyway, we have about 10 minutes left of the video. Let's just keep going through this.
Yeah.
Forward. It's just fiction, not reality, is comforting. It is easy to think that there is no harm being caused by the media you are consuming because to you personally, it may not feel like there is any harm done. Anecdotal evidence like you watched a murder mystery and did in fact not murder anyone misses the point, because the problem is not the individual impact, it is the collective. Most people who watched Birth of a Nation were not impacted, but some of them were, enough to cause the resurgence of the KKK. I think that to a lot of anime fans, this is a very uncomfortable reality, which is what makes it hard to accept. Nobody wants to believe that a show they are watching ended up contributing to the normalization of child abuse or general sexism, because if they are an American, they did not see it affect them. And unless they are willing to do research and look further into it, they won't see how it's impacting Japan either. It's easy enough for some guy to dismiss my argument by making a comment about how Japan has one of the lowest accounts of rape, so the repeated fetishy depictions of assault in super popular anime like Goblin Slayer or Sword Art Online is totally fine. And yes, that is a true statistic that is easily Googleable, but it is a misleading statistic if you aren't willing to do any more follow-up research. Because if you did, you would find articles describing that Japan's rape statistics actually increased by 27% in just the first half of 2018, reaching more than 1.3 thousand cases. The reason for this being is back in 2017, the definition for rape in Japan was strictly only defined as forced vaginal intercourse, but it was updated to include other forms of sexual assault and also men as rape victims, which up until that point had been excluded entirely. The revision also eliminated a requirement that the victim needed to file a criminal complaint before a case could be prosecuted. All this to say, it's not that Japan magically had less rape cases, it's that they were being underreported. When addressing these kinds of issues, you also have to consider that Japan has a long history of personal shame culture that tends to blame incidents like these as some kind of personal failing of the victim. In 2016, a government survey indicated that nearly a third of Japanese women have been subjected to sexual harassment at the workplace, including inappropriate touching and unwarranted advances. Nearly 2/3 did not make any complaint about the harassment, either formal or informal, and approximately 1 in 10 who did complain were penalized for having done so, including suffering demotion. And again, I am not talking about this because I think America is some bastion of moral integrity, or because I want to shut down this one commenter, but I am just so tired of people desperately trying to make arguments about things that they know nothing about, and aren't even willing to do any more research into it, or even change their viewpoint when confronted with new evidence. I feel like truth coming out of her well to shame mankind. Because these are such uncomfortable topics, no one really wants to talk about it, let alone listen. And especially not on a platform like YouTube, which has historically pushed women out of the creative space for, voicing their opinions. The horror. Many people just use anime as an escape from reality.
She's really not wrong about that last comment.
No.
The deeper ramifications.
And again, the thing is, a lot of what she's saying is in broad strokes applicable, but, again, it's the very overgeneralization element of it. This isn't specific to Japan, as people in the comments are pointing out. It's a common issue regardless. People don't report them being assaulted. Most assaults don't get reported, period. It's just Japan also had very limited laws in defining what sexual assault was in that time period. The problem is, though, that we're trying to boil this very complicated, very large issue down into talking about anime.
Also, I want to point out somebody that's making a comment in the chat. Sword Art Online was not written by a teenager. Reki Kawahara was 28 when he started writing it in 2002. That is in no way a teenager.
Yeah, that's a big misconception. But again,
he was very much an adult when he wrote those scenes.
Yeah, and again, there are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of works that include sexual assault in them too. So there are very good works that explore it. Or again, one of my favorite manga of all time is Berserk, and that clearly has lots of sexual assault in it, but it also has a mature angle to it as well. The problem is taking a very unnuanced perspective and saying sexual assault is this, or it reflects this specific thing every time. The lack of nuance is what's really harming her argument. But again,
of the media they are consuming. They just want to see someone get punched in all its beautiful animated glory. And if that's the case, just use piracy, please.
Oh, there we go.
If you really want to separate the art from the artist, just don't give them your money, at least. Also, to touch one last time on Dragon Maid, and then I never want to think about this again. I know the animation industry is hell, and I know KyoAni is still recovering from the damage caused by the arson attack.
Oh, that was just,
and
this
if
must
you
just
want
happened.
to support the anime production team, because in truth, the content of what they are adapting is not their fault. And the only way to do that right now is to watch Dragon Maid S, then sure, yes, absolutely do that if that's what you think is right. Life is complicated, and there is no one right way to live it. We just have to do the best we can with what we have. Since media does have an effect on reality, and the things that an author says or does can create real harm in the world, then as consumers, how are we supposed to engage with media? If we cannot blindly enjoy everything, must we cancel everything? No. What? No. What? At what point did I ever even... How would you reach that conclusion? The thing is, in life, you're going to come across a lot of shit you don't like, and you're going to have to make compromises.
Yes, I have
Unless you're a white cis-het man, like I mentioned in my isekai video,
really good.
You have to compromise to enjoy the majority of media you interact with. At best, you'll be underrepresented, or worse, represented in a way that drives you fucking nuts.
I find it interesting that she brings up Life is Strange as being underrepresented.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, again, and again, this is something I find too. This is a complicated thing too, because in video essays that I've worked on, I always want to include a large breadth of examples, but it's always very limited. You can only say so many different things. But it feels like the frame of reference here is a little limited at times, because we've mainly focused on 2 examples as the core crux of, I don't know. Anyway, so this finishes up. We're almost done.
The walking plot device to create fan service of the girls. I don't like that the default for female heroes tends to be sexy, and I don't like that the girls never get as much limelight as the boys. But I know this show was made for teenage boys, and the pros generally outweigh the cons for me. I know myself, and I know I can engage with media critically, and I know that I'm not going to accidentally start objectifying women after watching Hero Academia. Which is why, at the end of the day, I cannot tell you what is good or bad. You've got to use your own judgment. With something like Studio Trigger's work or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, my expectations going in have to be a little bit different because of the kind of off-the-walls storytelling they encompass. I can't hold Araki's work from 1987 to the same standard as the 2000s or even now because the landscape they were made in is completely different. Problematic is a vague word that is used very broadly. We have words for being openly racist or sexist or transphobic, but referring to any of these things as merely problematic is kind of like referring to a dumpster fire as, ooh, that's a little bit toasty. If something is problematic, it means that there's a problem. It may be a small problem you're willing to overlook, or it may not even be obvious until you examine the context around it. Or personally, it may not even bother you at all. But you should still know that it's there. And if someone tells you a thing is a problem, maybe don't shut them down immediately, and also do your ding-dang research. Canceling someone sounds so final and terrible, I think in part because some people do use canceling as an excuse for online harassment, which do not do that. Cannot understate that enough. I do not care what they did. Never send anyone death threats. But really, if you're wondering if you should cancel someone, all you have to do is just not engage with their work in a way that monetarily supports them. I loved Rurouni Kenshin as a child, and I loved Harry Potter, but I can't love them anymore, and that's fine. I would ask yourself, what really do you lose by choosing not to engage with a piece of media? In the end, after all, it's just fiction, not reality. You've lost one story that you will no longer finish.
Ender's Game's a big
It may
one.
seem hard at first, but there are billions of other stories out there that haven't been written by racists or actual criminals. I can lead you to the water. I can tell you where the water comes from, that humans need water to live, why it's important to conserve water and keep it clean. But I cannot make you drink the water. You gotta make that choice for yourself. Hey y'all. I see that there are more than you than last time. To the new
I think this is just a standard outro.
Yeah, it's the outro. Okay, let's take a step back. Now, I want to establish something here for a second. So, Noralities, cancel culture. This is why I wanted to cover this video. Videos, responses, 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 responses. So many responses.
Manga of children being sexualized.
So many responses to this one video. And this is also contributing to that number. Let's do some final thoughts in the video. Then I want to engage one last question. I don't think we have time for the second video, given how long the stream has already gone on.
Yeah, unfortunately, the one that I really wanted to get to, we kind of can't get to now. But we'll save that.
Save another night.
Yeah.
It won't be demonetized. I guarantee you that. Because this was fun. But so how? I guess the point I want to ask this right now, before I give my piece. Do you feel she said anything that was particularly, like, egregious?
That's the thing. In terms of what she said that was really so egregious about it, not really, no. Again, I've said this how many times in the last, like, nearly 3 hours since we started doing this?
Mm-hmm.
The points that she's making are genuinely really good. But she unfortunately goes from having a very nuanced way of, like, talking about it to sounding like she's very much trying to be pushy about it. And the way that she talks about this, like, you can tell that she's really passionate about it. But there's a line, and it's a very thin line, between being passionate about what you're talking about and then pushing that passion into being negative. And the problem I feel like with a lot of what she's discussed in this one is that she's unfortunately very much going more in the latter more than using the former in a good way.
Exactly. And the problem is all my counter arguments to her are the nuances. I'm saying, hey, I get what you're saying, I would phrase it differently. That's the extent of it. The video before this one is the I'm Tired of 1,000-Year-Old Lolly Dragons. That, as of right now, has 1.3 million views. And a lot of those views, I think, are hate clicks. Before that, she was just doing, like, very simple, very straightforward videos, very personal videos. And this launched her into a whole sphere of discussion that was... This and the isekai video. I think these two really did it. Put her in a position that was uncomfortable. And I've seen all these at some point in the past, And I generally like her content. I think she became better as time went on. I think her video on Kiki's Delivery Service is actually really good. I think her Cardcaptor Sakura one's really solid also. These two are pretty solid. She was just getting into her own, and unfortunately, I think the backlash really got to her after a while. And, I think that really is what restricted her from continuing, which is unfortunate because I think she had a lot of good qualities to her work. And I think that she had the potential to be really solid of a video essayist. The problem is she criticized anime, and the backlash was immense, and unfortunately, I don't think her articulation was all that successful. Oh, Classic Luigi fan, thank you for the super chat. I know this is probably me grading on a curve, but after your previous streams covering Doug Walker, Lily Orchard, and Chuds bitching about X-Men 97, Noralities comes as a fresher breath air. Yeah, I agree. She is a breath of fresh air.
That's kind of why I was really excited for this one, because Noralities is one that deserves to be talked about in a more somewhat positive light, and also because compared to Lily, Doug, and everything else that you've covered here recently.
Literature Devil especially. It was frustrating to watch.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's just like, you can tell she's actually making reasonable points. It's just that they're not that great in execution, and they need a little bit more workshopping, or they needed more workshopping.
Exactly, yeah. One comment I want to respond real quickly. If you can recommend just one story without grim, dark, or super upsetting content to someone who wants good queer representation, what would you suggest? Well, my first question would be, do you want a manga or a book or a movie or a TV show? 'Cause I can give you different answers for all of that. One easy answer that I recommend a lot, hang on one second, let me grab it for you. Actually, no, this too. These two right here. Okay, these are two really good ones. Where is my ears? One second, let me put my ears back in. If you want some positive recommendations, I recommend two very simple ones. She Loves to Cook and She Loves to Eat is a really wholesome Yuri manga. It's a josei manga, so it's more aimed for adults. It's about an it's about an ace lesbian who bonds with a girl she happens to be on the same floor with, based on a shared love of cooking. It's really delicious and wonderful. And also Go For It Nakamura, which is a very interesting, I think it was a one-shot originally, but I think it's updated a little bit since then. It's a cute little high school gay panic book. It's good. They're both really good books. Good manga. Good books, I'd recommend. It's not grimdark. I mean, you want YA, Simon vs. the Homo sapiens Agenda is pretty wholesome. If you want more adult, I'd recommend reading or watching the play version of Angels in America, which I think is an incredible work of media and fiction. Anyway, I digress. So, sorry about that. I got on a little tangent there. So we're talking about Noralities. Sorry, I saw that comment and went on a tangent there. I'm very sorry about that. But yeah, no. There's tons of great media out there that's queer and wholesome and not too upsetting. Owl House is also really good. Anyway, I think if Noralities if she had a little more, if she was able to, I think the problem is she became too popular too soon, or too well known too soon, and drew the ire of a lot of really frustrating, awful people. Mionyan, thank you for the super chat. After your Doug Walker stream, Dan Olson, Folding Ideas, released an AVGN video. Truly, this is a time to be alive. I have not seen that video yet, but I hear it's incredible. I've heard
that's on my watch list, actually. I need to get around to that.
I've heard it's incredible. I really want to see it, but I just haven't seen it yet. I hear it's a great video.
Also, Marakat brings up a really good recommendation. Sarazanmai is actually really good in that regard. If you're looking for some pretty good boy love stuff in there, it's made by the same it's made by the same writer of Revolutionary Girl Usna, and it's his most latest work. I would actually very much recommend that, given the fact that that's one of his more lighter series, all things considered, and it's very much more grounded compared to his other works, like Usna, Penguin Drum, and potentially Yurikuma Arashi.
Was that the bear one?
Yeah, literally it's titled Lesbian Bear Storm.
Lesbian bears, my favorite concept. And of course, Crimson in the comments has mentioned Steven Universe. If you have not seen Steven Universe, yeah. Oh, Princess Jellyfish. Oh, yes. Of course. Steven Universe is great. She-Ra. There's a lot of great pieces of media that you can consume that are queer.
We're living in a pretty good age for queer media, all things considered, to be honest.
Yes. Though, if you want something a little more intense, I got one for you. From the 80s, no less. I got one for you. It is... Oh, wait. Oh, is that the book? Was that the book I was looking for before with the N.K. Jemisin? No, it's not. Crud. Okay, I thought I found the book I was talking about before. I couldn't. I did not, though. But... Oh, there you go. Almost missed the chair. Books of Blood. Now this is a book. You want something intense? You read the Books of Blood. These are great. I have not seen Wandering Sun. I just saw that comment. No, I've not seen it yet. But Books of Blood. That's Clive Barker at his earliest. He got such great short stories as Dread, In the Hills, The City. Oh, this is a great one. Pig Blood Blues. That's a good short story name. And of course, the Confessions of a Pornographer's Shroud, Rawhead Rex, which I mentioned in tomorrow's video. There's some good. The Skins of the Fathers. Barker, the Midnight Meat Train. They got some good stuff here, all of which is queer tinted or explicitly queer. It's fantastic. Oh, there's some good stuff in this book. The original Candyman comes from the Books of Blood. Anyway, this is actually a book I bought for a high school research project. So, that goes to show how long I've been a sick little bastard. So, there's tons of queer books you can read.
Is Mulholland Drive a good queer media? I guess it would be good in the sense that it's about as good as anything done by God, what's his name? Drawing a blank.
David Lynch.
David Lynch, yes. It's as good as anything that David Lynch has done.
Yeah, I love David Lynch, so I'd say Mulholland Drive is excellent, but I wouldn't recommend it as queer media. I'd recommend it as a surreal piece of media.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it as queer media, to be honest. It's more one of those that's just like really good as like a standalone piece of media without that, not just as queer media. Like most of it's sort of in the same vein that I would recommend Twin Peaks, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for the trans rep in it.
No, yeah. It's great though. Reading through some comments, but I'm a cheerleader. Yes, Crimson, thank you. It's a good one. Clive Barker. Undying is really cool. Again, it's Clive Barker. Interview with the Vampire. Yeah, Interview with the Vampire is fantastic. I mentioned that. I also mentioned that in tomorrow's video. Heart of Thomas. I've not heard of that one. That sounds pretty cool. I saw the TV Glow. I also mentioned that in tomorrow's video. Revolutionary Girl. No, it might be a little too dark if you're looking for something softer.
Yeah.
Moonlight is incredible, but it's also intense. Moonlight's a very heavy film. I think it's beautiful, but it's heavy. Yeah, okay. I think I hit the big ones. Bee and Puppycat. I love Bee and Puppycat. It's so cute. Velvet Goldmine, the Chucky TV show I mentioned in tomorrow's video as well. Titan. Oh, Titan's great, but that's a trip. That's a heavy movie. Bound, I adore. Bound is fantastic. A new release just came out with the Wachowskis being gendered appropriately, which is fantastic.
Yep.
Wicked and Divine Comics. I actually met the author of Wicked and Divine. I interviewed him when I was working for CPR. Really cool dude. Q-Force. I don't like Q-Force all that much. I respect what it was trying to do, but I didn't love it. Anyway, let's talk about Noralities for a second. I can recommend queer media all night, and I probably could, but I do want to say this right now. I want to bring up something important. There's a reason Please Save My Earth. Oh my god, I remember that one. That was great. I remember seeing the OVA.
God, Boys Run the Riot. Okay, everyone's making really good recommendations in the chat right now. Keep that going for everyone who wants to have like really good not grimdark queer media. We need to kind of keep this on going, otherwise we're going to be here all night.
Seriously, I can go off on this all day. These are all great for the ones I recognize. But no, I really genuinely think that if Noralities didn't get popular this quickly, she could have really honed the craft. I don't see someone here who has any ill intent. I think it's just unrefined writing. And that's something you learn, When I was still writing for CBR, a lot of my articles were unrefined. And through criticism, I learned how to refine them. The problem is my unrefined articles got published, but thankfully it was under the banner of CBR. It was not under my name was attached, but I wasn't the headline. She's the headline. So there was a degree of separation for myself. Few people, they would just see the tweet and they respond to the argument of the article and wouldn't actually look at the article itself. I wasn't really targeted, but Noralities, because she's putting herself front and center and making these statements, she is being targeted. And that's unfair to her. Oh yeah, I subscribe to a lot of things, man. I don't know what to tell you, and I'll subscribe and forget about it for years. There's a few people here, and there's a few people I've subscribed to that I've kept tabs on for future videos, which will be relevant in a couple weeks when I do a video on the Acolyte. I'm just saying that right now. Noralities, I think in general, as she developed, she became much stronger of a video essayist. I think. After the cancel culture video, you had the Sailor Moon video, which she gives details Sailor Moon fan fiction, essentially, which I love. What am I talking about here? Back to the video. Oh, God. back to video. Is this like a reference to Joe Bob Briggs right here?
Yeah, like Noralities arguably could have kept going if not for the fact that a hate mob basically just overwhelmed her over time. I feel like if she came back, like, even now, she would probably be pretty well beloved. And if she came back with, like, what she was coming at with before and even sometime after that, the Dragon Maid video, she could have realistically had a really good... She could have pretty much become, like, pretty much one of the bigger anti-tubers on there with that sort of thing. But it sucks. It sucks that she didn't get that kind of, like, that. It sucks the way that it ended up, because, like, you can tell that she has some pretty good points here. And, like, I do want to go through that Magical Girls Are Gay video, because, one, it's her last video that she did before she, like, dropped off. But it's also because of the fact that Noralities sounds like that she would be making pretty good points if she wasn't focusing on stuff that was pertaining to drama with that one from there.
Yeah, that's the issue. She bit off a lot more than she could chew. And, like, here's the thing. I personally am used to drama. I wrote for a news publication like CBR. I was exposing myself to drama all the time. The problem is, you know, I think she opened herself up to way more than she could handle way too quickly. And that's... The problem also is some of her videos also had some very oversimplification of ideas. So, for example, I'm not going to play the whole video, but the Cardcaptor Sakura video, while good, it's about mainly... It is about the age gap. It's about the age gaps in the show. That's what it's about. It's about the age gaps. And specifically the teacher-student thing that was creepy and weird, and I think is weird. Genuinely uncomfortable. And that's something that most fans of Cardcaptor Sakura criticize. The problem is, I think, it comes down to two things. The oversimplification of the statement and the execution of the ideas. Those two combined results in the video opening herself up to criticism more. And that's problematic. But again, it also leaves out why they'd write that work. She did get better in that she gave more context to Clamp's perspectives in the video. But the problem is, she did have a very specific, very oversimplified perspective on the matter. And that resulted in some people getting ticked off. And it makes sense. The core of her idea is fine. The problem is the execution of it. I genuinely think if she had more time in the oven as a creator, she could have refined her technique, refined her writing style, and gotten better with her execution of ideas. The problem is she was overwhelmed too quickly and didn't develop in a way that would benefit the rest of the internet. Because I think she could have been a really good voice if she just had time to learn before blowing up. That's my opinion. I think if she didn't blow up so soon, she could have refined her the kinks in the machine, gotten better, and really developed a lot stronger as a creator. Also, and this is true, as people in chat are saying, the fact that Noralities is a femme non-binary person and not a cis male, yeah, she was targeted for that as well.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is awful.
Yeah. Also, there's like a specific question in there somebody's asking, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, which one's that?
The one by Jay up the top.
Oh, Jay. Where's Jay? Scrolling through. It might not be. I don't see it. I don't see it yet on my end. Can you read it? I don't see it yet.
Not a queer show, but have you watched a really campy 90s show called The Tribe?
Oh, no, I've not seen The Tribe.
I have, however. That's why I wanted you to bring it up, because, like, I'm just going to say it real quick. That used to air a lot. It's made in New Zealand, but, like, it aired a lot in Australia.
Oh, by the way, Noralities' pronouns are she, they. So if you said she, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And again, like, it's... Yeah, she, they, I'm pretty sure. And again, the thing is... In life in general, there's going to be a lot of media you consume that isn't perfect, and there's problems to it. The problem is... Oh, live chat. Okay, that might be it. Because I have it set on... Oh, here we go, live chat. Oh, this makes so much sense. Okay. There we go. That makes more sense. Okay.
But yeah, I think the point that I get the points that she was making in this video. I just don't feel like they translate all that well when she's trying to actually like make them at the throughout all of this.
Yeah, and that's tricky. Oh, I'm seeing a comment about Magical's so gay. Why refer to Blue into you as asexual Yuri, even though the last scene is a sex scene? Well, okay, that's complicated because asexual people can still have sex and enjoy sex. That's a whole complicated discussion right there. Asexual means you have no sexual attraction. That does not mean you don't enjoy the act of lovemaking. That's a
that's a common misconception with asexuality, is that they're completely celibate.
Yeah. I'm seeing people mention Illymation as well, who did nothing wrong, also, I might add, and was, as people have come to realize now, was kind of, I don't want to say framed, but like her words were taken very out of context and twisted by malicious actors. And that happened in Noralities too. A lot of malicious actors misconstrued her words. And it's awful. It's really sad. And I hope Illymation comes back because I think her content is really great. Yeah, it sucks. And especially if you're a queer woman on the internet, you're going to be a target for harassment, for bad faith harassment. Or trans of any kind, or gay, or bi, you know.
Yeah, funny that.
Yeah, the problem is also that she overgeneralized a lot of art. That's the other thing, too. That's a legitimate criticism. She overgeneralized a lot, and it does border into xenophobia to an extent. I'm seeing some people in chat mention xenophobia. Yeah, at a certain point, there is a point where your concern becomes a little xenophobic, or very xenophobic, or could be read as xenophobic. And that's deeply disturbing because there is a way, there's a boundary between concern, discussion, analysis, and xenophobia. And the problem is it's a very blurry line at times. So I can see someone seeing some of these arguments and thinking it is xenophobic. That's a fair point too. Which, by the way, is not the same as racist. Xenophobic just means you are different. Kind of, it's hard to explain xenophobia exactly. But people have mentioned now I'm seeing people talking about the webtoon boyfriends. Yeah, no. And again, like, if you, yeah, it's, oh yeah, Illymation had to move her house because she got threatened so much over stuff she didn't even say. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. People on the internet are ridiculous. It's truly horrendous. And for nothing. For absolutely nothing. And that's, like, they wanted to hurt Illymation. They wanted to hurt Noralities. The problem is, yeah, so xenophobia is less about racism, more about against foreigners. Yeah, or foreign ideas, exactly. What? No, Illymation was not the... Oh, no. Okay, I'm seeing people confuse Illymation with Illuminati. They're two different people. Illymation was not Illuminati. They're very different. Illuminati was the one plagiarizing Legal Eagle. That's a totally different situation. Illy made a comment about, like, body shaming, essentially. No, totally different. Illuminati deserves what she's getting. She opened that well herself. Yeah, no. So, boyfriends I'm not a big fan of, but again, there's a lot of misinformation about boyfriends, you know? I'm seeing in chat, the author is a trans man, not a Fujoshi. Yeah, exactly. Crimson has it right there. It's again... And again, it's a very thin line, and it's very complicated. And if someone is being xenophobic, it's right to criticize that. You know? Entirely so.
Yeah.
The problem is the right-wing grifters who are making the comments aren't the ones criticizing xenophobia. They're usually just appropriating language to make a point, quote-unquote, against an enemy of theirs. But I think we've had a long enough chat about all this. I think probably at this point, it's getting late for me, and I'm sure it's getting later in the day for you, Chloe. It's probably like lunchtime for you right now. For me, it's like...
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself, God, I could eat right now.
Well, I'll let you go in a second. But first, to anyone who is still on chat, Chloe, where can they find you?
Oh, that's pretty easy. Well, seeing as we're on YouTube, can you just quickly bring up my channel real
Oh,
quick?
absolutely.
Because there's a
Happily.
few things that I kind of want to go through here real quick.
I can definitely do that. Chloe, here's
So,
your channel. If you haven't subscribed to Chloe, please do. So you can see I'm
yeah,
subscribed.
Yep, so as you can see, my most recent video on there is a video that I just did on K-On! And it's part of my In Transition series. I talk a lot about my personal history with the show, and one specific person I met in high school that got me introduced to the series, and how this inadvertently led me down my route as a trans woman. But if you click on the community tab real quick, that's not the only thing I have coming up on K-On! As you scroll down a little bit. I've got another one coming out this upcoming week, and it's a longer form retrospective on the series of K-On! Where I talk about my general feelings and look at the series retrospectively, and how I feel it's kind of got why we have this series to thank for the rise of moe blobs in a sense, and kind of why animation studios like Kyoto Animation are so highly praised now because of works like K-On! So if you like K-On!, if you like Kyoto Animation, or if you really just love history lessons on why the anime industry is the way it is right now, and why there seems to be like bigger series having like such media saturation as a result of it, come watch this video on Monday, subscribe to my channel. You are going to love this video when it comes out next week.
The channel is Chloe Sunflora. And I've seen some people talking about Frankenstein. That's for tomorrow's video. Tomorrow, I have a video coming out at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time focused on LGBTQA horror. If you want to see some interesting stuff there, check it out then. It comes out at 1. Always leave a like and comment on it, because this video is not going to be monetized. We talked about all the different stuff already. This is going to be moment I hit stop on this, is getting demonetized in a second. Like that video, I know that's getting monetized already. It's already gone through the checks and balances, so that won't get monetized. So if you like this stream, come back at 1 p.m. and visit that. Either way, even if you don't like K-On!, Chloe has a lot of different videos here, a lot of Utena videos. So if you like Utena, you have like 5 hours worth of content in Utena?
I am the 5-hour Utena gal. I have an entire playlist of that series for a reason. I talk about a lot of various different topics about like older animes from the like decades ago, cartoons from the West, you name it. I also do a podcast with friend of the channel, Jazzy Oliver, as well as a friend of ours, Missy Rowland. That is also on there as well. I also delve into some stuff as well, reevaluating stuff like the 13th Doctor's run in Doctor Who, and why I feel like that one might have some bits and bobs of it that might be pretty good. I also did a video on Legend of Korra in the same vein as well last year. I also do ranking videos from time to time. Basically, it's a smorgasbord. You'll probably, if you go into my channel, you'll probably find something you'll enjoy.
As always, any guest of the channel, I will push as much as possible on all you, because I think they're incredibly talented people. So that's going to be it. A couple questions I'm getting in the chat I do want to address before we wrap up. Will we be talking about Noralities again? Most likely. I mean, this seemed pretty successful. I think a lot of people are interested in this discussion, and I think it's good to engage with arguments that we kind of agree with but kind of disagree with, because I think it's important as a counter, because in general, we talk so much about like people who we don't like grifters and all that, but we don't engage enough with arguments that are on our side, but we think could be better articulated. And I think there's a lot of good to discuss with Noralities. I think she's a really fascinating creator, and my hope is that she comes back and makes more stuff. I think she is, one of those people who deserves a second chance, I think, on the internet. So that's that's
definitely.
I'm seeing some discussion about Fujoshi's on in chat. Can we do a whole stream of Illymation? Yeah, I can do a whole stream of Illymation. I'll do some more research on it first, because I want to make sure I get my facts straight. That's the one thing. Again, like with Noralities, I don't agree with everything she says, but I respect her stance on it. I know she's coming from a place of a good place. The problem is, was it successful? That's the part I disagree with. But I know she's coming at it from a good angle, which is where intelligent discussion and fair discussion can come in. good faith arguing exists for a reason. We need to discuss and engage with ideas in a way that's productive and beneficial and good. But I've held Chloe back enough. She has to get some lunch. So at this point, I will think.
You also need to start winding down. It's like 10:30 over
I'm
there.
out of tea. My tea's gone. I brought a pot of tea with me, and I drank all of it. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around. A lot of you stayed around, which I'm very happy about. And I think next week is going to be a more. It's not going to be Noralities, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be Doug Walker either. I'm going to be doing some research for a video I'm working on. Oh, Super Chat. Adrian Parchman, thank you for the Super Chat. What hat about it? Nuxtaku. Oh, that's a whole other discussion. I don't know. It was chai. It was chai, by the way. I drank some chai. I'm not sure about Nuxtaku. Nuxtaku is a whole web of chaos and volume. My problem with Nuxtaku is he's so loud. But yeah, no. Next week I'm going to be doing research for a video I'm doing on the Acolyte, actually. The reaction to the Acolyte. So I'm going to watch a few Acolyte reaction videos and reviews and kind of analyze their perspectives on that. Which will involve more Star Wars theory than Nuxtaku. Which is a whole other discussion. I think Nuxtaku speaks before he talks. He feels like he has like, I don't know how I feel about that kind of stuff. I've seen his stuff. I'm not a huge fan, but Star Wars theory is going to be who I'm looking at next week for the most part. And his views on Star Wars. That might be a solo stream, because I don't think I can guilt any of my friends into coming on stream to endure that.
No.
So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I look forward to you all seeing my video tomorrow, and I look forward to bringing you guys back next week for some Star Wars discourse, which is a precursor to a whole video essay on the Acolyte. So, I know, God may have mercy on my soul. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chloe, again for joining us. And
thank you again for bringing me on.
No, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I'm now going to sign off.